Hello, Globebusters. Yes, of course they're serious. You do? You have? No kidding. Uh-huh. Oh, they'll cure your globitis this week. Thank you. We got one!
Ladies and gentlemen,
It's the Globebusters.
What are you supposed to be, some kind of a cosmonaut?
No, we're exterminators.
and now, here's your host.
And welcome everybody to Globebusters, putting it all together. I'm your host, Bob Xanadude60, and here we are back on a Wednesday night with another great show for you. And tonight we're going to talk about, some stuff that many of you are very familiar with, but, I feel compelled to talk about these proofs because I don't know about you guys, but, when I go into my comments section, I constantly see ridiculous questions like, explain sunsets or explain this or explain that. And they're also unbelievably inane. It just tells me that they really have no clue whatsoever. And they're probably not even listening to the show, but, there are definitely people that are out there that simply, don't get a lot of it. They don't have the time to watch, or put in as much time, studying flat earth as others do. So, that's what I thought we would talk about tonight. Just talk about, all the evidence that is on the flat earth side, which is virtually all of it. And I'm sure you guys know that. If you have studied it, the more you study the flat earth versus the globe earth fails on every single aspect without a doubt. Even the things that they think are absolute killers, like equatorial mount telescopes or, Polaris being, at whatever degrees, and then you go back 70 miles and you get another degree. They think that is some sort of irrefutable proof. It's just ridiculous. And it honestly works much better on a flat earth than it does on a globe earth. And the fact that these people cannot see this is beyond, it's simply beyond belief. And so I've also been looking at some of the websites out there that are like so-called debunking websites. And man, these guys are really, really reaching for the low-hanging fruit. It's pretty bad. And I'll actually look at, one of those tonight, which is pretty funny. But it kind of disguises itself as a flat Earth site, but it's really a very pathetic debunking site. But whatever. So anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And let's see. Let's go ahead and introduce our panel for tonight. We're kind of expecting John the Morgul. Don't know where he is, but hopefully he'll pop in shortly. But until then, we have from Good Times for All, Mr. Zachary Zabala. How you doing today, Zach? Oops, you're not talking there, Zach.
Oh, sorry. I had my headset muted too. Sorry about that. Yeah, beautiful day here. Really good day for me. I found a guy that was willing to give me some horse poop for free. All I had to do was come shovel and pick it up. So yeah, I was on cloud nine. It was a good day.
It's a good day when somebody offers you free horse shit, no doubt. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably elaborate, give a little background on that. It's for the garden, and so some of the wood chips,
I've done so much gardening, and I've never found anything that will help your garden as much as horse manure does. So that's why it's such a good day. I finally found, it's weird down here. I think people snatch it up a lot quicker because the clay is so hard to grow in. People who actually do garden, they mix a lot of the manure into the soil. He said he did it knee deep. He had his tiller run knee deep, and he had manure. Man, his garden was beautiful, just enormous. I was jealous. I was. But now, this garden, from here on out, they're just going to take off. I knew it wasn't going to be the greatest with these wood chips because they suck so much nitrogen out of the soil as they're breaking down, and it's the first year. But this will really help that breakdown process because it's full of nitrogen. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, very cool. Well, we're looking forward to tasting some of these vegetables and stuff when it gets when it all gets grown up. It's amazing how fast it grows, and it's just cool to have a garden back there. So awesome. All right, so let's move around to the next person. Next up, we have Mr. John Savage with us tonight. How you doing tonight, John?
Hey, Bob. Hey, everyone. Yep, doing well. Coming to you from prison Britain still. But the weather's nice for a change. And for a change, I don't want it to be nice. I want it to piss down with rain because I've been fixing the windows on my lorry. And hopefully, I don't know if it's worked. So with my leaky windows, so I'm waiting for the rain, which is a bit sad.
Can you just put a hose on it, or?
I did that before, but it doesn't work. It's not what you think. It's not the actual windows leaking. It's complicated. Believe me, I bored Zach with it last night, but.
All right, cool. All righty then. Okay, and finally, last but not least, we have Mr. LC King or Lucas with us tonight. How you doing today, Lucas?
Yeah, doing well, Bob. Thanks for having me on the show.
Excellent. You're very welcome. So cool. All right. So where should we start? God, I just looked at the video that was playing. That's just classic. Anyway,
can't unsee that, can you?
Yeah, I forgot about that particular scene in there. It's still pretty funny. But I mean, there's so many videos that are out there. So I was watching, of course, like I always do, watching Flat Earth videos. And we actually found, I think, Zach, you said you found a couple of content creators that you had never discovered before, right, this week? So I went and searched for a couple, and I found a few more that I couldn't find because YouTube makes it impossible for us to find each other. And this, by the way, may as well be, kind of like number one of the things that goes towards the preponderance of evidence for the flat Earth. And, obviously it doesn't prove anything, but you have to ask yourself, guys, if you type in flat Earth on YouTube or Google, it immediately goes to all these sites that are highly ridiculed, debunk, Flat Earth debunking site, or the Flat Earth Society, which of course is a government-controlled, site. There's no doubt about that. In fact, you guys may or may not remember, about 4 years ago, I had a guy on from the Flat Earth Society, and we basically said, look, it's straight up obvious you guys are disinformationists, and to listen to his responses was classic. But the guy's name was Pete Zvaryer. And I'm sure he belongs to one of the intelligence agencies, but it's just incredible that they have to have, that kind of stuff. So you go in, you type flat Earth, and it used to be back in the day when you could find literally tens of thousands of videos, and they were just literally everywhere. And now you go in there and all you see is Professor Dave Explains, debunking the Globebusters, or debunking this or debunking that, with the most superficial and ridiculously, pathetic arguments. It's unbelievable. And again, like I said, if you're on the fence, you don't know, this is something you need to ask yourself. Why, if flat earthers, if this is such an innocuous thing, why is it so heavily guarded against? Well, some people have said, well, it's dangerous because it turns people away from science. And it's like, no, that's not true at all. In fact, flat earthers are very much behind the idea of science and what it stands for and the scientific method. And it's, the fact is that the mainstream has openly admitted that they simply do not use the scientific method. And the reason for that primarily is because who's going to finance it? If somebody has come up with some research and done the research on something and said, well, these are our conclusions, and that research costs $2 or $3 million to do, what would be the point in anybody else going to confirm it? Where does the money come from to do that? There is no money that comes from any government agency or anything like that says, oh, well, we better go and check all these guys, and follow them. And as a result of it, we have shown you multiple newspaper articles and stuff like that where people have gotten away with just writing complete nonsense papers, submitting them, having them published, having them quoted in the scientific community, and actually treated as legitimate papers when they were a hoax all along, right? Why? Because they simply do not peer review their stuff, right? So in contrast, now when the flat earthers go and they do an experiment, everybody replicates it, right? And there, there's so many examples of that. It's ridiculous. Whether you're watching an eclipse and analyzing the eclipse and doing the view angles on that, or you're just, looking across a lake to a shore all the way across on the other side where, the shoreline should be 2,500, 3,000, 4,000 foot below your eye level. And yet you can see it 100%. And the Globers, of course, will tell you, oh, yeah, it's refraction. It brings it up every single time perfectly to exactly where it would be eye level. It doesn't matter where, but it always does it. So it's just absolutely a miracle, right, that it does this.
The censorship thing is quite ironic, actually, because I've heard so many people say that they wouldn't have looked at flat Earth at all if it wasn't for the fact of the censorship. And the last time I heard the scores, it was 19 million videos before they changed the algorithms. You remember that? And now
Yes.
It's just total nonsense. But
there was more of them than hits on the president of the United States. There were more flat Earth videos than that. It's crazy. Yeah, continue on. I'm sorry, John.
No, that was it. Really, it was. I've got like a 500-page Word document that I was collating my research when sort of 6 years ago when this all started off, and I can go back through that now, and I would say 90% of the links to YouTube videos are dead now, gone. Unless I'd taken a copy of them or whatever. It speaks volumes in my mind.
Yeah, it really does. And it was funny, even putting tonight's show up, we had to try multiple times to get it to even list on YouTube, right? I mean, it went up fine on Rockfin, it went up fine on DLive, went up fine on Rockfin, but I mean, it would not go up on YouTube. It showed that it was created, but it didn't show that it was one of our, and finally, about a half hour later, it popped up, right? And it's like, usually when you create the video, it's there instantly, right? There's no reason for, not to do this. But, as I've told you guys before, YouTube has got me so unbelievably censored on this channel that I cannot even comment on my own channel, especially if it's a comment where I'm kind of, harshing on somebody. Something like that, any negativity or anything like that, it won't even post it. It won't even list it at all. It's absolutely incredible that it does that. And yet the trolls come here and they get away with complete filthy language and all this stuff. Doesn't stop any of that. I have to manually.
I've watched it in real time. I've sat here and watched Bob on Globusters 24/7 post comments on his own channel and then be erased. He's put comments on my channel, and I approve it. It pops up there. It's up there for maybe 2-3 minutes, and then poof, it's gone.
Yep,
it's crazy. Yeah, I don't know what I don't think they do that to me, but I've never really checked it, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I think they do the same for my channel as well, where I'll see a comment, pop up, and then I'll go and click on it to see, where it is, and it's gone.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so a lot of people in the chat are saying it's happening to them too, and I don't doubt it. I mean, this is, or you will see like YouTube all of a sudden the YouTube bot or whatever it's called, I forgot what it's called, the YouTube thing, it comes in and will start deleting comments, and it tells you that they deleted it, right? And then you're looking at the comments and it's like, well, what's wrong with that comment? You know, it doesn't even make any sense what they're deleting. It's just like they're just kind of willy-nilly taking pot shots at the chat and eliminating things. Because what's funny is, you know, some of the things that, and that's when I was wondering if it was a bot, right? So because I watched some of the things that got deleted by this supposed YouTube moderation team, right? And then I would put something blatantly derogatory in that I knew would get, and nope, went right through. It's like, wow, that's crazy. And that would be on somebody else's channel. Again, I can't do that on my own channel. I'm lucky if I'm able to even post a comment on my own channel. It's ridiculous. So
yeah, YouTube sucks. We really need to kick it to the curb.
Well, we are. And,
Swallow.
Yeah, it's bad. And that's, of course, why we're on Rockfin and we're on DLive right now as well also. But, and you know, the great thing about having the other platforms is A, they're fair to the creators in allowing them to, you know, generate some revenue for their work, which is really great. And they don't, they don't take all your super chats or all your tips. They do take a small percentage, but it's nowhere near what YouTube takes. YouTube takes a full third of super chats, and it's just absurd, and they really, really screw over the creators. But one thing that YouTube does have is they have the audience reach. So that's basically why we have kept this channel, because we have, after 5 years, amazingly, we still only have just under 63,000 subs. That
should be 500,000.
Yeah,
at least.
it should be a lot more than that. And especially when, and of course, 2-3 years ago, we would have 20,000 views by the end of the day, right, on our videos. Now we're lucky if we have 3,000 or 4,000 views by the end of the day. So,
Well, when you went over to DLive that one time and it started showing there were like 3,000 people watching or whatever, as opposed to YouTube saying, 800, 300, 500, whatever, that there showed straight off that the figures you're being shown are complete nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of those crazy comments, there's a comment in the chat that just says, live in the mountains of northern Arizona and then tell me the earth is flat. Oh my God, dude, I lived in Colorado. Of course the mountains aren't flat. It's the overall trajectory of the plane itself. We're not on a sphere. So yes.
Now, these are the people, these are the comments that I think are probably bots, because no one can be that stupid.
Well, apparently this guy can be that stupid. I mean, seriously, I'd be embarrassed making
you do the math and you take it from, what they tell us, Antarctica to Antarctica, the South Pole to the South Pole, and lay it flat. Mount Everest, and you made that 1 foot across, put it on like a pizza tray, a 1 foot pizza tray. Mount Everest would be shorter than the width of a human hair off that pizza tray. So the tallest peak, you wouldn't even feel it with your fingers.
Well, even the ballers' own analogy says that the Earth is more perfect than a billiard ball or a snooker ball.
Mm-hmm. It has less dents,
except when it's a pear.
Yeah.
Oblate spheroid or whatever they want it to be this week. Yeah,
it's pretty ridiculous. So anyway, I mean, those are exactly the kind of comments that you get that tells you that people, they have no idea. And Austin's running across the same thing. He's out there doing all the flat smacking in DC. And, he's walking up to people, offering him $100 to answer simple questions about the model that these people defend, right? How far is it to the sun? How many times does the earth rotate in one day? I can't believe people can't answer that one. It's like, really? You don't know how many times the earth rotates in one day?
Seriously.
That's unbelievable. You just sit there and shake your head, and they call us dumb. and yet they sit there and defend it to the end. Or like, our commenter in the chat here. Oh yeah, look at the mountains. Yeah, tell me we live on a flat earth. It's like, ay, caramba.
Bless their hearts.
Yes, bless their hearts. They're just, they're so clueless. But so I couldn't do what NASA, or not NASA. I couldn't do what Austin does. I mean, I would lose it so quick, because just watching the incredible amount of ignorance and disdain that they show towards Austin, because he's out there, talking about something that, the entire world has come to the conclusion that it's ridiculous to think that the earth is flat. And so, they think that they've got the upper hand on him, and he's the dumb guy. And it just amazes me.
This is why I don't leave the house and I don't talk to people anymore. It's just not worth it for me. I'll end up in some police cell or something.
Yeah, I know. Well, and of course, my approach is, I won't even debate these guys. I mean, I get challenges all the time. Oh, come and debate me. You think this, and it's like, no, I'm not going to debate you. I don't care about making your channel money. I don't care about what you think. I'm here to tell people about flat earth and what I think about flat earth. And that's what my show is about. That's what it's been about for 6 years. Jeran and I started this with that explicit purpose. We are not interested in debating people. And
not anymore, no.
Well, I never was, because when have you ever seen a debate settle anything?
Well, exactly. I mean, but it wouldn't be so bad if it actually was a debate. But they don't seem to understand how debates work. I've watched numerous debates on evolution versus creation, and they were really useful. And you could come away from it, deciding for yourself what it was that you sided with. Whereas these flat Earth versus globe Earth debates are just. They're not debates at all. They're nonsense.
Oh no, they're definitely not. And then it just evolves. And unfortunately, from what I've seen by our so-called debate teams is, they devolve into the same type of mentality that the ballers bring to the table. They sit there and they'll smash somebody and make all these points and then ask how their balls taste. It's like, are you serious? Is this really the kind of thing we want to bring, to the light of flat earth? It's like, oh my God. But that's another channel. I don't deal with them, never will, and don't ever care to either. I just well, I'm sure everybody that knows who I'm talking about knows why, because if you don't think the way these people do, then you are the enemy. You are called a shill. You get toe tagged, yada, yada, yada. And it's just really ridiculous, especially when we're supposed to be all on the same side. So not only do you have to deal with the ballers, but then you have to deal with the flat earthers who think that they know more about science than anybody else there is. And if you have a different opinion, well, that automatically makes you an agent or a child molester or, something. It's just crazy. So that's the way it goes. All right. So what I want to talk about, guys, and John did message. He said he'd be here in a little bit. So what do you guys think? What are some of your, favorite proofs that when you look at flat earth and you start explaining it to people, what are the things that you like to point out to them? And, Zach, I'll start with you. What do you do?
My favorite, I love going to Polaris because, the story that they tell is so obviously false. Polaris has been there. Stella Polaris means the pole star. That's what it was named, the pole star. Supposedly Ptolemy had 900 years of, charts and data to go through. Well, he was naming his constellations, and he named that one Ursa Minor, still Ursa Minor today, the tail. He named it the pole star. So why would anybody in their right mind, after watching something process, this procession where it wasn't the pole star, and name something the pole star that you knew one day would no longer be the pole star? That makes no sense to me. And then here, 1,850 years plus later, it's still at 89.55, in 15 seconds or whatever they say.
Yeah. They're trying to tell us that, it's supposed to process, X amount of degrees every 2,150 years or something like that, to where we get a new pole star essentially with the change of the zodiac, right? Isn't that the way it's supposed to be?
Yeah, well, it does a whole one. In 26,000 years, the pole star that we have now will be the pole star again. But on its trek, at 26,000, year journey, we'll have multiple different pole stars along its way. They say Vega was our last one 5,000 years ago when the Egyptians were blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Even though that's never marked down anywhere,
Exactly. Yeah, the great year is 25,920 years for it to go all the way around. All of them, and each sign of the zodiac is allegedly 2,160 years. So there you have it. And of course, every time that happens, we're supposed to have a new pole star. But again, we have things going back well over 2,000 years and that are still saying that Polaris is the pole star. There's no, and ballers will say, well, they were just planning ahead or something. I don't even know what their excuse is, but it's utterly retarded, some of the things that they say. It's like the Georgia Guidestones. That was really a powerful one, I think, for a lot of people. When Austin went out there and took the pictures, the time lapse of the stars going around Polaris at the Georgia Guidestones, looking right through it, right? And here it is, absolutely perfect, going around in circles, no change. And again, when you think about it's bad enough that you think that we're going through all these gyrations, right? That could even keep in the center there for 2,160 years when we're going in multiple millions of miles an hour in multiple different directions is patently absurd. It's like, where is the critical thinking of these people that obtain PhDs in astronomy, right? Where is their brain? How can they not see the obvious fallacy that's going on here?
Yeah. Well, when we were taught, most people thought that the sun was stagnant. When you show them that animation where it's, the sun flying through with a big long tail and all the planets flying around it, that is what, a lot of people have no clue that that's what they're supposed to believe that they're on. They think the sun is just sitting there and we're just spinning around it, and the sun doesn't really move all that much, when in reality the sun's moving faster than a comet.
Yeah.
Well, that sort of model is how I perceived it before, understanding flat Earth. But where you had basically the sun was sort of stationary and all the planets went around in a plane. So when you see that model and it's flying through space, that changes the whole, your whole perception of their model even. Yeah.
And that it's so funny because I actually learned about this video when I was in a Nassim Haramein class, right? For being a emissary for Nassim Haramein. And he's like, well, no, nobody ever takes into consideration, they always show the sun just sitting there statically, right? And that all of these gravitational things just work out perfectly, of all the little, moons of the planets and all this stuff. But they never really want to let anybody know that the sun is jetting around at 67. Well, I mean, they'll tell them, you can look it up, right? But that it's jetting at 67,000 miles an hour. But you know what? You couldn't even reproduce this electrostatically, never in a million years, with something going forward at that velocity, right? It just simply could not be done. And
yeah, but Don Pettit with his needle and water droplets. Come on.
Yeah, well, and that's about the closest thing to orbital dynamics that you can actually demonstrate, and it's done with electrostatics, right? And of course, that they want to, claim that property and say, oh yeah, well, orbital dynamics, has this property, like this knitting needle here. We've all seen that, right? And it's like, but we're not talking about velocities that are going up to millions and millions of miles an hour in multiple directions. How does that all hang together? It's just crazy.
Well,
And
that's
yet-
right. It's like the same as getting that knitting needle to fly across the room at the same time all these water droplets are following it.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
No, never, ever, ever is it ever going to happen. And yet the ballers will slurp that up big time. And like I said, this is only one of several motions. This one, you've got the Milky Way that's also going around the Great Attractor at 1.3 million miles an hour. And then, on and on and on up to, and I've seen up to 600 million miles per hour, at some ultimate velocity. But of course, the ballers will come back and say, well, it's all relative. It's like, relative to what? Relative to what? To relative to each other? Is there a relative to is a center point? What does that mean, relative? And if it's relative, then why are we assigning these hundreds of millions of miles an hour velocities to this stuff? Right? It's just non sequitur.
Exactly.
Good point.
Exactly. And then from there, I go straight to oh, I just had it. I'm sorry. I'm having a brain fart.
That's okay. It'll come back.
Join my club.
Yeah, it'll come back.
Just interrupt when you figure it out. But
all right.
Yeah,
I'll tell you some of mine.
Okay, let's hear them.
Obviously, number one would be the gyroscope. I don't know how any pilot on Earth can be a heliocentric model follower, knowing that sort of stuff. Obviously, I don't talk to anyone, so I put it into my own experiments. Like Zach was saying, with the long exposure of the pole star, that was an eye-opener for me that I hadn't looked into before, and something anyone can do. Lighthouses. I've got a whole list here. We can see too far. Moon landings in general.
Hang on a second, John. Let's go back to gyroscopes for just a minute.
Go for it.
Because gyroscopes, they're huge, right? They're absolutely huge. And you have done the same experiments with gyroscope. You actually more than I have even. You have the same gyroscope as me, right? That precision, super precision one? Okay, right. Yeah. So John and I both have the super precision gyroscope that was like $300, right? It was really super expensive. And it was you and also Rob
Durham.
Rob Durham, right? Rob Durham also did this, right? And initially this all started off with me showing a training video, right? Of a U.S. Navy training video on the gyroscopic instruments on a plane, right? And they're talking about that, when the plane flies halfway around the Earth or a quarter of the way around the Earth, then basically that gyroscope is going to have to precess because the orientation of the plane has changed relative to the ground, right? In theory, with the globe model. But the problem, and they show that all the way through. And then, so Rob Durham goes out and he buys that exact same gyroscope, the commercial grade aircraft gyroscope. He puts it to the test, right? And what do the Globers say? Oh, well, it's not sensitive enough to do that. It's like, what do you mean it's not sensitive enough to do that? How can it not be sensitive enough to do that?
Didn't he drive around with it in his car?
Yeah.
It showed elevation. It showed everything.
It showed everything
he was doing, going up hills, down hills. Every little movement that he took, it showed on. It looked like the artificial horizon.
Yeah, but
right on his dashboard.
They would have you believe that no gyroscope is capable of measuring 15 degrees per hour unless it was what's his name? The Foucault's gyroscope, right?
Oh, yeah.
Foucault, he came out with a gyroscope to allegedly, or I don't know if it's the gyroscope first and then the pendulum, or the pendulum and the gyroscope, but it was another one of those backup things. He has this old-timey pre-Christ gyroscope, no electric motor, machining that couldn't be anywhere near as precise as 21st century, theoretically, right? Of course, some of the videos by Iwa would dispute that, but
and it ran for like, what was it, 2 minutes?
Yeah,
4 minutes,
2 minutes,
something
tops.
like that.
And our gyros will run up to almost a half an hour, right? We can spin those bad boys up.
24 minutes. 24 minutes. I timed mine. How long?
And I just balanced mine and ran it with a motor for 6 hours, 12 hours. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
and nothing. But the point, something I wanted to mention was that you said someone did it with the precision gyroscope, and they put it on some sort of mechanism or recorder.
It's called a 7-day recorder, and this was
7-day.
Yeah, Rick, Seventh Day True Seeker, because remember they were complaining with you saying, well, it can't measure 15 degrees per hour. So Rick takes it, right?
It's a toy. It's not capable. It's just a toy.
And even the manufacturer says it can't do it. And it's like, really, that's crazy. So Rick puts it on there, and not only did it, which would then bring it down to being able to detect 1.5 degrees per hour, right? And not only did it detect it, it did it accurately, incredibly accurately. So 7 times slower than what they said could be done. But they're saying, no, it can't do it at 15 degrees per hour. So he proved that it could be done at 7 times slower that speed, right? And then, of course, well, he cheated or whatever. I don't even remember what their excuses were at that point, but it just gets ridiculous, you know?
But to call it a toy as well is that it's just a little executive toy. It's too small. That was another one. But the bearing indicator that that Rob Durham dismantled, the gyroscope was about half the size of the precision gyroscopes that we were working on, and they're machined to huge tolerances.
Higher. It's a lot easier to get the RPMs higher when it has a lot smaller circumference.
That's exactly right.
Because of the edge velocity.
That's right. So the edge velocity. So it's actually good. And yes, of course, FE Core bought a gyro compass, right? And when Rob looked inside of it, it's got this little bitty teeny tiny gyroscope inside of it. And it's like,
and I spoke to him. It's probably about a month ago now, but I thought it'd be a quick call. He was just ringing about the gyro compass. About 4 hours later, we're still talking about this thing, and we still can't work it out. What it's doing, how it does it. It's a total anomaly.
Well, I actually have some thoughts on that, and a lot of it has to do with reflecting back on the fluid dynamics demonstration that we did a couple weeks ago. You know, actually not that we did, but Fractal Woman did.
Yeah.
And that really put a lot of very clear visions in my head as to how this is actually working. And so I need to put that together, but that's part of it. But there is also another element that's going on, and I always forget the name of this thing. You know, when you drop the magnet down the copper pipe.
Oh, right. Yeah, diamagnetics.
Yeah, but there's a name for it. Crap. I'm sure somebody in the chat will come up with it. Anyway, that is Lenz's law. That's right. Yes, Lenz's law.
Yeah.
So that is part of it, because when you are, first of all, when you're spinning things, there is this propensity to generate this field around it anyway, this gravitational type of field. We've seen several experiments that not Walter Lewin, but one of the other guys, Eric Dollard, not Eric Dollard. Anyway, one of the other guys did. And so I was thinking about that, and it just made a lot of sense that, you know, the north magnetic pole, because there is a north influence there, that what it's actually doing is it's drawing that compass around to it as it spins. And I'm kind of trying to work that out and put it together. I'd love to be able to get a visual on it. Of course, I don't know how to do that. So maybe if I can explain it to somebody well enough, they can actually animate it. And I think that maybe that will be at least a plausible explanation. But it has absolutely nothing to do with the Earth being in motion. But I would say that it does have a lot to do with the ether being in motion.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of how they explain it works, it's just gibberish. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to explore how we think that works, but it's definitely got something to do with the elements you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the fluid dynamics, like I said, that thing really set off a lot of bells for me. And, you know, it makes you, it really makes things a lot easier to understand, about how magnets work and how the luminiferous ether works, how it relates to gravity and this downward acceleration and all of this stuff. It just really made it very, very clear. So, yeah, that's something that we'll definitely expand on. But anyway, so as far as the gyroscopes, so that was the one thing that I wanted to point out is, so we did the gyroscopes, we got it measured accurately at 1.2 degrees per hour instead of 15, right? And I don't really remember what the baller's excuse was at that point, but
just ignore it.
Yeah, just ignore it. Or they'll point towards Stefan's video where it was going through a torque range. And this caused a big deal in FE Core, right? Because they're saying, well, we should release all this stuff. And we're like, no, if you release something like that without having it completely checked out, and we knew what was going on, he knew full well that what was happening is he was spinning that gyro up past a specific torque point, and it was causing it to precess. And then he would take his measurements right as it was going through that torque range. Right.
Well, if you're going to release the information, then release all the data, so that people can analyze it all. Don't cherry pick parts of the data. And yeah, it was a bit weird, that one.
It was, and obviously it caused a lot of problems because it's like, you don't understand, if you put something out there like that, then they're gonna, the baller's gonna take off and run with it like it's a fact. Just like how they took off and run with my 15 degrees per hour, proving the rotation of the earth. I mean, absolute utter nonsense, but they spouted off like it's, like I actually proved it. And they don't even know that it wasn't me that did the experiment. Right. I mean, ignorance just runs amok when you are dealing with the mentality of the Globers. And this, of course, is why I won't debate them. They're liars, most of them.
Yep.
So, but I really would, if it came to debating somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'd do it in a heartbeat. And I'd love to, and I'd rip him a new one. I would absolutely love to do that, but I know that'll never happen. But I would do it. So there you have it. Anyway, so go ahead and continue on then, John, with the rest of your list.
Well, the moon landings was obviously,
oh God, yes.
If I was to start anywhere, it would be, because if people don't realize the moon landings were a complete fake, then you're probably not going to take the other leap and look into the flat earth. So that's got to be higher on the list. Stars after 6 months on either side of the so-called circle around the sun. How is it you can see the same stars? Parallax of stars, Mercury and Venus being able to be seen at night, and impossible moon phases, full moon during the day and crescent moon at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
That's my list.
Yep, those good ones. And John just joined us. John, I muted you because when you came on, we could hear Mina talking in the background, so you're muted. But come on in, unmute and say hello to everybody.
Hi, John.
Oh, man, do I have to? There he goes.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Yeah, and actually, I think what I'm going to do is probably switch over to my laptop because this phone is just giving me grief. But yeah, hey, everybody. Sorry, I was running a little bit late, but yeah, hello. Good to see you guys. Good to be here again.
Okay, cool. Go ahead and switch over to your laptop, and we're just talking about our favorite flat Earth proofs and globe debunks.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. So he's going to drop out there for a minute. So...
you named there, John. That one, it took me a while to wrap my head around that one. That was one I kind of said, I don't agree with that, and really didn't critically think about it.
Which one, sorry?
The crescent moon at midnight. Yeah.
But you're the one with the marshmallow, man. You're the one who...
I understood it. A lot easier to explain, but I know John, the Morgau, he was talking about that years before I got it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why, I just brushed it off. And you know, I mean, he's a great researcher. I don't know why I did it. It was that cog dis, I think.
Some people still don't believe that it shows anything, which I find is quite interesting. But I mean, not some people, some prominent flat earthers still don't think that the crescent moon at night time and the full moon during the day is anything to write home about. But I think it's an absolute heliocentric model killer.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that. And, you know, it is interesting because some of that stuff that you would think would be impossible, like, for example, Mike Kavanaugh has been able to successfully model, and it just is like, it just seems still like a stretch because there's just something not quite right with it. So I really have a hard time with that because that's kind of where I'm weak, is in spatial perception like that. So I kind of have to rely on others.
You got to watch the marshmallow video, Bob.
The marshmallow
People
video?
don't know what we're talking about. Have you got a separate? Yeah, have you not seen that?
No.
Oh, Bob. Zach's marshmallow demonstration of the phases of the moon. We'll get you a link. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, you have to show me that. And I know John's definitely got some issues with it.
They took hours putting together all these slideshows and this and that, trying to explain it to Rob, Aussie Rob. And he's just like, nope, don't get it, don't see it. So finally I just grabbed a marshmallow and went outside. There was a light outside and it was dark out, and I just held the marshmallow up and spun around with it in my hand, and he got it just like that. Yeah.
That's amazing. It is so weird what people will latch onto and they'll go, oh, I get it now. So, and I've said that for a long time too. It's like, you never know, what part of an argument, even if it seems totally nonsensical to you, to somebody else, that absolutely will be the thing that convinces them. Just like what you said earlier, John, the people saying, well, I never gave it any credibility until I saw how much censorship there was around flat Earth. Then I looked at it very closely and went, wait a minute here,
Well, this is why I haven't got a sort of set routine to talk to, if I was to talk to people about it, because like you say, it's the damnedest things that can just set them off. If you ask everyone what it was that finally made you look into this, then I imagine most of them would have different things.
Yeah, absolutely. For Cami, it was taking a string and some thumbtacks to a globe and, measuring distances and looking at relative distances on a globe. And, no matter all the videos I had shown her, she looked at them, but then when she took that string to the globe, then the whole paradigm changed. So it's just like, you just never know. That's pretty funny. So, okay. So yeah. So you said the moon landings, of course, that is a huge one. And the excuses that they come up with still to this day, it's been since 1973 or 74 was the last Apollo mission.
72, I think.
72, 70. Yeah, it's been a long ass time. Let's put it that way. So
not in my lifetime, put it that way. And I'm an old bugger.
Yeah. 40 plus years. It's absolutely ridiculous. And they just keep coming up with excuses saying that they're going to go back. And then they say they've destroyed the technology to go back. And, and the other thing I was noticing today too, I was watching some flat earth videos, and it's like, they were actually pro space videos, and it was all about NASA and showing us pictures of Saturn and Jupiter and Mars. And these are supposedly the ones that were taken by the Voyager probes, Voyager and the other ones, I can't remember the other probes that basically flew out through the solar system, right? And they've got all this fabulous footage, as they flew by Saturn and Jupiter and Mars and Pluto. And then it's like, where's the picture of Earth, right? Where is one picture of Earth that they say is not a composite, that they say is an actual photograph? And if you can actually find that one photograph, why is there only one? It's like, people, come on.
Just beggars belief, doesn't it?
It's like, it is.
Two photos since 1969 that they claim, that NASA themselves claim are authentic photos. Every baller out there will claim there's hundreds and thousands of photos and don't be such a retard. But NASA that actually only claim 2 as being legitimate photos. And as we know, even that's bullshit.
Well, yeah, and then Bart Sabrell comes out with that video showing them faking pictures of Earth. Putting that little in the window, making it, look like there's a shadow on the Earth or whatever they were doing. But yeah, absolutely 100% faking it.
Right.
Saying they were looking right out the window of the lander, but in reality, they're at the back of the lander, looking at a very small circular window.
Well, they were faking being.
Whoops. What happened?
Did we lose Mr. Savage?
Oh, yeah. I thought
I think we might have. We had that trouble last time he was on Glowbusters. Now, I talked to him for like 3 hours last night, and there wasn't a hiccup. But we spoke about this because the last 2 Glowbuster shows he's been on, he's been removed like 3 or 4 different times.
That's crazy. Absolutely nuts. John, you're back. How is your signal working?
How do I sound to you? I can hear y'all pretty good.
You sound fine.
Okay, great.
All right, cool.
Sorry for the interruptions, y'all.
All right, no worries. So anyway, yeah, you're right. In the movie, a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, right? Bart Sabrell's movie. They got that leaked footage, and and I really even wonder about that, honestly, because supposedly it shows them even in low Earth orbit, and maybe it's possible that they can be in a low Earth orbit as long as it's under 100 kilometers or 62 miles in my mind, honestly, because I think the firmament is there. I don't believe that they can go above that. So maybe they have some sort of technology where they can get up somewhere near that and call it a so-called orbit. But yeah, when they were shooting out the window, allegedly, they had to put an insert in the window to make it appear like a crescent Earth, and that they were calling in from halfway to the moon. And they just got busted dead to rights on that. But, like I said, I wonder about that being a propaganda piece because, people could come back and say, well, yeah, but at least they were halfway to the moon, right? And it's like, no, they weren't halfway to the moon, whether they were faking it or not. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like they can certainly do high altitude flight, very high altitude, but I don't know if I'd call that orbit, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So the moon landings definitely, of course, then you look at the Mars missions, the helicopter mission. What a joke. I mean, we debunked that. We debunked that before it even went there. There's no way that there is enough atmosphere to fly a bladed aircraft in the so-called atmosphere of Mars. Even though it's a complete fantasy, I mean, NASA completely cut themselves off from that, from the get-go, by coming up with these completely fake and fictitious numbers. And now all of a sudden they have to provide craft that have to fly in those numbers that they made up. And when we put things in a vacuum chamber and reduce it to, 0.063 of Earth atmosphere, it's less than 1%. It's like 0.6% of Earth's atmosphere, right? And then they want us to believe that a bladed helicopter is going to actually be able to propel a multi-kilogram craft and fly it around on Mars, right? When we took a high-pitched blade inside of a vacuum chamber and set it right next to a little bitty teeny tiny feather and turned it on, and it didn't even move the tiniest little, hairs on that feather, right? It's like, so again, how are they convincing people that they're able to fly around, a 15, 20 pound craft? It's just absurd.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And when Action Lab did it, he broke his first propeller. He had a little plastic propeller, and the edge velocity got so high from him turning up that engine so high that it just shattered into pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't move the base at all and shattered the thing into pieces. And the thing flew around perfectly fine, easily, when it had air in there.
Yes, absolutely. And God, it's just crazy. And that's another thing, you know, the whole edge velocity thing, right? And that's another thing that, you know, I've got to put together and actually do that presentation of the guy that gave me the PowerPoint presentation from Flattoberfest. But, you know, we've talked several times about even though the Earth is allegedly turning at 0.00694 RPM, right? Because of the fact that it has a 1037.5 mile per hour edge velocity, the stresses from the centrifugal force on the Earth would simply make it fly apart. Now, the Globers will try and convince you that because it's so slow and it's moving slower than the second hand of a watch, right? That, you know, that you would never even notice. It's like, yeah, it may be moving slower than the second hand on a watch at the source, but when you extend that out, you know, several thousand miles to when you're getting an edge velocity of over 1,000 miles an hour, the centrifugal stresses are absolutely off the chart. And when I say off the chart, I mean there is no way in hell that the Earth could possibly hold together with those kind of stresses on it. It's plain and simple. We can do that with a lot of different things.
Yeah, that Tesla guy, he did, I think it was right at 1,000 miles an hour edge velocity on his Tesla turbine. And when he got it going that fast, it destroyed the turbine. And this thing was super precision, balanced, and, you know, crafted well.
Yeah.
That one guy, it was only 840 miles per hour, and he got it to RPMs. It was small, but the RPMs were 240,000 RPMs. And it was only 840 mile an hour edge velocity, slower than the Earth is spinning.
Right.
But we're the science deniers, right?
Yeah, we're the science deniers. And then so you have to ask yourself, look, if this guy who, you know, was at the Flattoberfest, this older guy who's really a nice guy, was able to break down the math and do it all and then find out what materials would handle those type of stresses, then you have to ask yourself, where are these PhD level engineers doing this simple edge calculation that is in the engineering handbook that tells you exactly what you need to know? And why aren't they doing that calculation?
They run a mile from it, just like the guy I had on Twitter who was from Cardiff University. He was a bolometer expert. I'd never heard of that, so I had to look it up. But it's someone who basically measures temperatures for a living. And I simply asked him to go out and do the experiment that I'd done 5 times to see whether moonlight was cold or warm. And every year I'd go back to him and go, "You done it yet? You done it yet?" And he was there inviting me up to Cardiff University to look around all his labs and everything. And I'm just like, come on, man, just go out and do it. Assign it to your students or something. It's a simple experiment.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like somebody that is interested in science.
No.
You know, if a scientist heard that, they'd be like, okay, I'll try it. Boom.
Especially if that's your scientific acumen. You know, that's what you do, is measure temperatures. And he's literally 50 miles up the road from me at, you know, one of the largest universities in the UK or in England, wherever we are, Britain. And after 3 years of nagging him, nothing. I was just like, well, there you go then. But we're the science deniers, right?
Yeah, we're the science deniers. Absolutely. It's just amazing. Or, you know, the thing like my presentation that I did for the 2019 Flat Earth International Conference, right? Which was all about angular sizes of the planets and their brightness, their luminosity. And, you know, I talked about not only the inverse behavior between size and distance, right? So you double the distance, the angular size gets cut in half, right? But I also talked about the inverse square law that electromagnetic radiation must obey, meaning light or radio waves or whatever. And it's a very, very, very simple formula, right, to do this. And I even put it in a calculator, right? and did the calculations, and it came back with such a high number for the moon being so bright that nothing could ever be that bright, not in a million years. And then we have people like George Nutsack that come back and they completely try and rewrite the equation for something that's so simple for the inverse square law. And of course, he did this initially to try and prove me wrong when I was telling people that the transmitter power required to make it to the moon that the ham radio operators could use, legally under FCC, all that, couldn't even make it there. Or if it did, it would barely make it there. But the idea that it then bouncing off the moon, coming back, penetrating our electromagnetic field that they tell us stops all of these radiations that are coming in, right? But yet it seems to have a specific bandpass for 2-meter ham radio or whatever. It's like incredibly ridiculous. I mean, so they completely rewrite the math on it and then say, well, see, it works. There you go.
While we're careering through this vacuum of space at God knows how many millions of miles as well. So it has to get to the moon and then go forward to catch up with us or something. I don't
and
quite understand it.
How does that light beam or how does that EMF beam get carried along with the frame of reference? How does that happen?
Exactly. But of course, they know that you're wrong. We have to be wrong because they saw it on their wireless.
Exactly.
Back in 1959 or wherever.
Yeah. Well, it
wasn't blinding light. It wasn't blinding light. So you have to be wrong again. They are more than happy to deny the science when it suits them.
Yeah, which honestly most of the time, and what they are approving of is not the science. It's complete gobbledygook. It's nonsense. They also will tell us, well, we know that those reflectors, the Apollo guys put those reflectors up there for the laser beams, right? And it's like, well, okay, so then we pull up a Popular Mechanics from 40 years before that, when they're allegedly bouncing lasers off the moon, right?
Yeah, 1962, I think it was. And they first, no, it was even earlier than that.
Yeah,
but the whole moon, they tell us, is a mirror reflecting the sun. So how can you not reflect something off it, but you need man to travel all the way there and stick a 1 meter square mirror
reflector
on the moon. I mean, it's just
that you've got a bullseye, right? That you've got the bullseye, right? You've got to, and the other thing that they don't take into consideration, and I laughed my ass off when I was watching this on, because they were doing that experiment on that TV show, Big Bang Theory, right? They had Sheldon and all the guys up there, and they're up on a rooftop, and they're like, oh, look what we're doing. We're going to fire a laser pulse at the moon, and then we're going to get it back over here, right? But the thing that they so they've got the laser on one side, and then about 3 feet over, they've got their detector, right? But what they forgot to explain, though, is that supposedly we would have moved 4 kilometers, during the time, 4 to 10 kilometers, somewhere in there, during the time that it would have taken for that laser to reflect back, right? Whoops.
But we don't worry about the actual science, do we? We don't worry about that. It's close enough.
Yeah.
But what about the what is
even
it?
the big giant, photon collectors that they have at the big giant ones, not the little one that they had on the roof. Isn't it they get 7 photons or some ridiculous small number to bounce
1
back?
or 2 or something like that. And how do you pick up 1 photon out of the noise, right? Of all the colors and photons that are bouncing around. What do they have, a DNA fingerprint or what?
Just as every pilot should know the Earth is flat, every ham radio operator should know it's flat too. Should know this is all nonsense.
Yeah. Well, being a ham radio operator since I was literally 13, so yeah, almost 50 years. Yikes.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, at one time I bought it. I was heavy into HF. Back in the day.
But no one was pointing it out to you back in the day, were they? They weren't saying, look, what were they, Voyager, sending radio signals with 1/trillionth of a billionth of a watt or something?
Yeah, when it got
Can
here,
you
that
pick
was
that
it.
out in the noise? I mean,
Exactly.
it's just...
And that's another thing, right? We have NASA, right? We have a supposed NASA engineer that is telling us that Voyager, which is like, 2 billion miles away or something like that, has a small parabolic dish with a transmitter that's running about the same power as a refrigerator light bulb, right? So we'll give them 25 watts, all right? So 25 watts through a parabolic dish that may have 15, we'll even give them 20 dB of gain, right? And that would give you a few kilowatts of effective radiated power. Not a lot, but somehow that signal, when it arrives here, it comes in at 1/10 trillionth of 1 billionth of a watt. And we are able to pick that out of the noise, which the noise floor, by the way, guys, is infinitely higher than that would ever be. So to even make that claim is so absurd. And I ask myself, where are the PhD electrical engineers? How are they not seeing this? I mean,
but we're also sending signals to this thing and reconfiguring it 2 billion miles away at the same time. I mean, like you say, it's just crazy.
It really is. So, I mean, this is, like I said, this is too easy. I mean, we can just shoot these things down all day long. And that's why I say that all the evidence is for the flat earth. And, there is no evidence for the ball earth, So it just astounds me. It really does that these guys, talk about stuff like this. So one thing, I guess we can cover this now. Let me stop this.
One thing,
Okay.
before we move on, one thing
Sure.
would be worth doing would be reverse engineering the maths of what, according to their parameters, what sort of signal strength you would need to contact something 2 billion miles away. What sort of wattage would you need? Because I imagine you'd need an antenna thousands of miles high and, running more than Alex Jones.
You would have to have an effective radiated power probably into the trillions of watts.
You'd fry everyone on Earth, wouldn't you?
Well, I wouldn't want to be in front of that antenna. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. I see Open Their Eyes is a ham also. He says he's been a ham for 42 years. Yeah, awesome. It's good to know there's more hams in the community. And yeah, I've been a ham since I was 12 years old, and now I'm 60. So that's a long time.
And I wasted 2020 becoming a ham. So, and both my children did as well. So there you go.
Yep. And I got my amateur extra at 16 and have had it ever since. That's kind of cool. But I like it when there's other hams in the community. So anyway, okay. So let me show you one of these things. Okay. So, oh yeah, somebody was talking about globebusters.crypto. Somebody actually bought the .crypto name for Globebusters and Jeranism. Can you believe that? And, now,
Yep.
And they want to sell it to us for $3,720. It's like,
What?
it's like, boy, that was a stupid buy on his part because I'm never going to pay for that.
That's funny.
It's ridiculous. It's like, why would they do that? They go in and they pay, it costs like $40 or whatever to go in and buy this. And you can just see these guys because they know, Jeran and I have both dealt in crypto, right? And it's like, I can just see the guy's thought process. Oh, I'm going to get those Globebusters and the Jeranism, and I'm going to buy these because then they'll be begging me for this. It's like, you know what?
Hold
we don't
them
give
for
a crap.
ransom.
I'm laughing at his stupidity for buying it.
Good speculation there. Nice one.
Yep. Yeah. Bad. Anyway. Okay. But I digress. Sorry about that. All right. So the Selenelian, right? And now this is one of those right here, this flatearth.ws, right? Debunking flat earth misconceptions. This is so laughable. Because one of the things, of course, that, we think is a no-brainer is the Selenelian eclipse, right? Now, the Selenelian eclipse is an eclipse that allegedly takes place when both the sun and the moon are above the Earth's horizon. And yet, they're saying that somehow the Earth's shadow, the Earth itself, its shadow is refracting up and getting in the way and causing the Selenelian. And beyond that, not only is it doing that, but somehow it's coming in from the wrong direction. So what do these guys say? What is their excuse for this?
Over 50 times this has happened as well, according to the Royal Observatory.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something that just happens it's happened quite a few times.
Right.
And recently enough to be a YouTube video too.
Yep. So here's what these guys say. During a total lunar eclipse, the position of the sun, earth, and moon is in a straight line. In such a configuration, both the sun and moon should not be visible at the same time during a lunar eclipse from an observer on earth. No shit, Sherlock. However, this is the laughable part. Earth's atmosphere reflects light. As a result, the actual position of the moon is up to about 0.5 degrees lower than where it appears. And the same thing happens with the sun at the opposite point in the sky. It is the reason that observing both objects in the sky at the same time during a total lunar eclipse is possible. So now they're saying that the moon's image itself is being refracted down a half a degree into our atmosphere, and so is the sun's.
Well, why stop at half a degree? Why not 1.5? Why not 5? Why not 20 degrees? This is like, Jeran saying that we're being told that we're shooting through the world at 2 million miles an hour. Why not make it 50 trillion miles an hour? Because it's just so ridiculous. But this can be extrapolated out to Newton saying that if you fired a cannonball at the right trajectory and speed, then it would come around the Earth and hit you in the back of the head. I mean, they can literally make this shit up until the cows come home. It's half a degree, it's 1.5, it's 2.5. It's like a percentage error or an acceptable error or something. They just make it up as they go along. It's infinitum.
Yeah, and it totally is. And the other thing behind that is, again, they use it when it suits them, because they can say, well, it refracts in at a half a degree, but yet when Eratosthenes did his experiments, allegedly, he was counting on the sunlight coming in parallel, right? Because the sun is so far away. Well, wait a minute. What is it? Is it parallel or is it refracted? And, if it was refracted, then none of his calculations could have been correct, right? But by the same token, if it's parallel, then we have a whole nother set of problems, right? That goes on with this. So it's like, they just kind of go back and forth and pick whichever one suits them. And I'm sorry, but it's just ridiculous. But yeah, if you guys have ever seen this flatearth.ws, it is a joke. It is such a joke. And I think we're going to tear through this website one of these days just for fun.
What is .ws? Is that's?
I have no idea what WS is.
All right.
But yeah, I've seen it pop up a lot, and people send me stuff, linked to that, and I read it, and it's just, it's kind of like Michelle Thaler saying, well, you can only get a circular eclipse showing up on a ball with another ball. And then, of course, my first inclination is to whip out Ira's video where they pass a straight edge over the top of a ball, right? And it makes a perfect circular eclipse, right?
But we don't talk about that.
Yeah, such silliness. So, okay, so...
I remembered, Bob.
You remember?
Our
Okay,
second thing
shoot.
I like to bring up
Okay.
after Polaris. This one I like to bring up to the Bible people. I brought this one up to actually Miss Lillian next door. When she was talking about the Bible and this and that, and then I started kind of nudging flat earth in there. I was like, talking about how the whole world's going to be deceived. I was like, that's why they're deceiving us. The Bible says the earth is flat, motionless, set on pillars, does not move. The sun goes around us, and she couldn't deny it, But the one I always bring up is that according to the stars, we are the center of the universe. And they deny it even though they can't disprove it.
Yes.
They've even written, Hubble said it adamantly, we have to deny this at all cost, because the idea that we are, in this unique position is unfathomable.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, we're in the cosmic center of the cosmic microwave background. Everything shows us to be in the center of the universe. And I forgot what the term of that is. I'll think of it here in a little bit, but there's a term for it. The region that we're in, but essentially we are in the center of the universe, and the cosmic microwave backgrounds show that, right? And they simply, it's funny because they have gone through this, they've done tons of scholarly tests on it, and yet they seem to be at a loss to be able to debunk it. So they come up with all these theories because they know it simply can't be true, right? It's just like, it can't be true that the earth is not going around the sun. So they will debunk known science that has been in use for hundreds of years, right? Like the Michelson-Morley experiment, interferometry, stuff like that. And they will invent things like the Lorentz contraction to try and debunk their own science, to the exclusion of all common sense. And it's just, again, it's beyond belief that they do this, but that's exactly how it works with them. So pretty crazy. So John, what do you think? What do you got on some of your favorite flat earth kind of proofs?
Well, I think the thing that really kind of solidified it or concreted it with me was the lack of geological motion. So this is a sort of an anecdote, I guess you say, that I've told a few times, but it really hit home with me. So the first time that I ever flew in a plane, I flew from Orlando to Dallas-Fort Worth. And on the flight there, I was looking, just sort of bored or whatever, because, the thrill gets gone pretty quick on a flight after you take off. But I was looking at the tickets for my return flight, and I was figuring it up, because I expected to see the return flight, going back to Florida, going east. I expected that to be a lot shorter duration than the flight from Orlando to Dallas, right? And in fact, the duration of the flights was identical. And so when I was looking at that, and I double checked to make sure, because you do go through a time zone, and so there is that. And I'm like, well, no, the duration of the flights is the same going east and west. And so when I got off the plane, I think I was probably about 10 or 11 years old. I told my aunt, I said, hey, Aunt Diana, I'm pretty sure that I just figured out that the Earth isn't spinning. I swear to God. And she looked at me like I was crazy, and I explained it to her, and she said, well, no, you don't understand. You just don't get it. And it's because, the atmosphere is moving along with the Earth. And so I was like, oh, okay. And I never thought about it again. But then when, here in 2015, a few years ago, I was looking into flat Earth, and that popped back in my head. I was like, I was absolutely right as a little kid. But that was something that really struck home with me because, when you're looking into this for the first time, it is a really difficult thing to come to terms with, because we are so indoctrinated with this belief in the spinning ball Earth that it is hard to shake that belief. It is a difficult thing to let go of, and something that I had realized as a kid. It really did sort of help me to come to terms with it. But, there's so many proofs. I mean, there's so many things. The lack of curvature is something that you may have to gain some altitude to see, but the lack of motion is something that I struggled with my whole life as a globe Earth believer. I mean, I really did. Because you got to remember, it's not just supposedly that we're spinning. I mean, they claim that we are not only spinning on the axis, but then, you're orbiting the Earth at 66,000 miles an hour, orbiting the sun rather, at 66,000 miles an hour, the sun going around the galaxy at 500,000 miles an hour, and so on and so on. And they tell us that we don't notice any of this motion because we would only notice acceleration, right? They say that it's relative, and so you don't notice it because there's no acceleration. But the thing is the heliocentric standard model is slam packed with acceleration, or at least it should be, because these are all curved linear orbital trajectories that
and elliptical too. A lot of them are elliptical. In an elliptical orbit, you have to have an acceleration. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're traveling along a straight line path, sure, there's no acceleration. But if you're traveling along that curved path, then there certainly should be. But then the relationships between these orbital trajectories are always changing. Like from 1 second to the next, it should be a unique combination of these sort of curved linear trajectories. And the thing is the fact of the matter is the Earth is a fixed frame of reference. That is not debated by the globe Earth proponents. It is something that is agreed on both sides of this. And the fact of the matter is there definitely should be some acceleration, gobs and gobs of acceleration, in fact. And the fact that there is no measurable acceleration really just strikes this thing right out of the park, man. So, I would say that all in all, the lack of motion is something that is the biggest thing of flat Earth for me, way more than the lack of curvature. And so, but yeah, as a kid, it's something that I sort of stumbled on, and it really does speak volumes to the indoctrination, because my common sense told me that the flight from Orlando to Dallas Fort Worth should have been a longer duration flight than the flight I've got that backwards. In one case, you are racing towards a destination which should be racing towards the plane at 1,000 miles an hour, give or take. And in the other instance, you should be racing against a destination that's racing away from the nose of the plane at 1,000 miles an hour. And the fact that the two flights are identical in duration, virtually, that really was that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, essentially, you should be able to. I can't remember the woman's name. It was 100 years ago. Began with B, but she suggested you should be able to launch up in a balloon and wait for New York to come, in London, and wait for New York to come to you. And same with in Orlando. You should be able to hover and wait for Texas to come to you. Or
well, that's when they came up with the atmosphere is locked to the rotation of the Earth, because it's then at that point they'll try and claim it has attributes of a closed system, but it doesn't. I mean, but it is. But in the flat Earth model, not only is it a closed system, but it acts like one, right?
Well, they want their cake and eat it again, don't they?
Exactly. So yeah, it's utterly ridiculous, when you think about it. Now, for me, here's a couple more things that I think is amazing. I've been flipping back and forth on this azimuthal equidistant map, which gives us our magnetic flux, our wind, and our ocean currents at all different altitudes. And we can choose a conic equidistant or an azimuthal or a globe model, right? And when you look at this, right, when you look at these wind patterns, right, and it's like, well, yeah, winds are just kind of going everywhere, and you really don't think much about that. But then when you think, yes, this one has AE on it, none of your business. When you think about the fact that the Earth is in fact flat and there is a dome over the top of us, and you think, well, how would that behave? How would winds behave in an atmosphere like that? How would the magnetic field behave in a environment like that? How would the oceans behave in a field like that, an atmosphere like that, environment like that, excuse me? Well, the answer is it isn't this, obviously. This is all jumbled up, doesn't make a whole lot of sense at all. But yet, if we kick over to the AE and look at this, and we see we can go up to all different levels. Look at that beautiful symmetry. I mean, this is absolutely incredible. What we're looking at here, guys, is the wind, and these are the velocities of the wind, the pink and the red, but look how they go around almost as if they were contained perfectly, and then they have different directions going inside and out to match the centrifugal and centripetal lines of force that are coming off of the toroidal magnetic field, or the ether that is flowing. Absolutely matches it beautifully. Let's go up another height. Look at that. Again,
I wonder, Bob, if we took the differences between the two maps and where they bow down, you know how it's kind of a squiggly line on the globe? It goes up and down and kind of like a snake going around it. Could we tell where they manipulated the map? From the AE map to the globe map, just the difference in like where the dip downs occur.
Interesting. I'm with you. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good
how
thought.
they bent it around the globe.
Reverse engineer that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they banned this, the null school. That's why they banned the AE view of it. I used to use this all the time when people would say, well, how come all the winds circulate, I can't remember now, anti-clockwise in the southern hemisphere, clockwise in the northern, and I would go real time to this and show them one circulating in the wrong way and shut them up completely. But yeah, they had to get rid of this little beauty of a map, but it still lives, doesn't it, on Bob Wins.
Yeah, Bob Wins is good.
It also it really does describe, this interaction between the sun and the weather as well. So it's going around in the same circle. So I think
you
it
can
lines
see
up perfectly that way.
You can see the track, can't you? You can see where it is, and it shows eddies coming off it, just like you're drawing a paddle through the water. It's like it's exactly the same, and it's so beautiful. It smacks you in the face, or it did me the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. The first time I saw the earth.nullschool.net map. Now, look at guys, and for those of you guys, if you have not been around long enough to know about this, let's go show this. EARTH.NULLCHOO. Oopsie, I mess up here. SCH.
Just on a side note, the path of the ISS as well. If you track that on a globe, it's ridiculous.
It doesn't make any sense. No.
Up, down, up, down. Are they moving themselves? And if you transpose it onto what we're calling the AE map there, then it's a perfect circle or perfect circles. It's horrible.
The ISS, don't they claim, what is they claim that the ISS altitude is? It's between 250 miles and 300 miles, right? Isn't that what they claim?
Yeah.
And, a big thing for me is a lot of people say, well, you can see the ISS with the naked eye and with the telescope. But, the thing is say the ISS is about the size of a football field, and that's being generous. If you're talking about an object that size, 250 miles away, you shouldn't be able to see it with your naked eye or a telescope, just because of the sheer angular size of it would be too small to render in the eye or even in a telescope. And
the
so
angular
I would say,
resolution, yeah,
right.
So something 0.002 or
and
it doesn't work.
The fact that you can see the ISS, or what is claimed to be the ISS, with the naked eye, sort of proves that it is not a football field size object 250 miles away, right? So it kind of debunks itself. The fact that you can see it is evidence against what they're claiming that it is.
Exactly.
It's either much closer, it's either much bigger, or it's because the figures they give us are impossibilities that you can see it with the naked eye.
Yeah,
that's like saying I can see the Eiffel Tower from 600 miles away. It's like, no, you can't.
Right, exactly.
It's the sky, but this thing has so many solar panels on it. I mean, that's what most of it is made of. It's got that little shaft running through the middle with people on it, but all the wings and everything, those are solar panels. They're made to absorb light, not reflect it back. So yeah, the whole idea that we could see just that little shaft reflecting that much light.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah, it's
And the question is, what are we seeing exactly? Because you would only, it's not, they don't claim that it gives off its own light. It's not luminescing in any real sense. And so it would have to be reflected sunlight. And yet at nighttime, it would definitely be, sort of eclipsed by the earth, right? So any light coming from the sun would be blotted out or obscured by the earth itself. So it's in the earth's shadow. What exactly is it reflecting, right? I just don't really, I can't come to terms with that. And of course, so the answer to that is real simple. All of these problems are solved very simply with the flat Earth realization is that it's not actually what they claim. It's probably just some regular, normal form of craft. I think, Bob, you had mentioned that it looks sort of like a U-2 sort of spy plane.
Yeah, that's been outfitted with some LEDs, super bright LEDs.
Yeah, LEDs or something, right? I mean, that makes a lot more sense to me than what they claim.
Yeah.
I mean, we know it
This is where they can bend their rules again and say, like with the Leon, that it's distorted or refracted 1.5 degrees or whatever. That's again, they can say that the ISS is on the other side of the ball, but somehow the atmosphere is refracting it so that it's constantly reflecting off this flying mirror in the sky. It's just nonsense. Once again, sorry,
Yep.
keep using the word nonsense, but
Well, that's what it is. So anyway, guys, getting back to the story about this, for you, those of you that have not heard about the earth.nullskull.net story, this was a staple of a flat Earth proof. I mean, this, Jeran used it, I used it constantly, and you saw my projections that I was showing, and this used to have the AE projection in it. Well, one day, about 3.5, 4 years ago, they claimed that they were just having some site difficulties and the AE part of it had disappeared, and they just said, well, it's under maintenance, we'll get it fixed, right? And then a couple weeks went by and didn't get fixed, nothing happened. And then, Jeran wrote them and I wrote them and we're like, what's going on? Why isn't this fixed? I can't even remember what the excuse was. Jeran actually did a video on it, but they just kept coming up with these excuses about it. And the bottom line is that they purposely removed the AE projection. Now, the AE projection is used for a crap ton of things. For them to leave projections like the Winkleman butterfly or whatever this thing is called here, Waterman butterfly or the Winkle triplet, it's like these projections are ridiculous, right? They're completely pointless. There's no reason to have them. And here we've got an orthographic view, but they take away one of the most important and revealing projections there ever was on this, and that, of course, is the AE projection. So, and they did it specifically because of flat Earth. And ham radio operators used it all the time. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the even last month, the Radio Society of Great Britain sends me a magazine every month, and even today it's selling huge maps of not quite the AE projection, but one that's slightly distorted in order to stick Antarctica on the bottom of it. But essentially it's a just off the North Pole projection.
Yep. Now, and here's one of the most damning things there is about it. All right, so here we have on the earth.nullskull.net, we're going 10 HPA, we're going air currents. Let's actually go wind, okay? And we can do different heights, okay? Now, you see that this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? The way that it moves around, there's no symmetry to it. It just is kind of all over the place, no matter what level you go to, right? And it seems to get worse the higher you go. Now, we know that the winds aloft, the pilots fly in these high altitude winds, and they can get up to 2, sometimes 300 miles an hour in these winds aloft that they fly in. And of course, this is one of the reasons why they can make this supposed journey from Santiago to Sydney, is they just get in one of these high velocity wind currents, and they fly in it, right? And it gives them a ground speed of nearly 1,000 miles an hour, which of course is huge. So, but then you look at it on the AE, and all you can see is the perfect symmetry at every level, and how beautiful this works. You've got everything going perfectly around in circles. It's not a mixed up mess. Same thing with the oceans. If you look at the oceans, pop in here, the oceans, the same type of currents are going on with the oceans that you're getting with the winds. Okay. Then this one, which I think is amazing, the magnetic flux, you start looking at that one, and it's like, this is absolutely amazing. And what we're seeing here is a toroidal field that would indicate, if you guys saw the EWAR videos, how basically he was postulating the center magnetic mountain. It's not like even necessarily a donut ring, because the South Pole is not anywhere where it should be, right? It should be antipodal to the North Pole, right? And it's not even close. So, but what this is showing us is that if there is indeed a center mountain, like a Mount Meru or something like that, or a center coil, like Ewar was proposing, that here's the magnetic waves that you would actually, or field that you would actually expect to see out of it. This makes logical sense. It is congruent with a magnetic field pattern. It's logical. And I'm sorry, but the globe model is ridiculous.
And just the fact that they got rid of the AE map. I mean, your guy has recreated this with the AE map. So their excuse that something went wrong with it, or it was a bit of code that had gone wrong, is absolute bullshit.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't it funny how they react to the things that we talk about? It isn't just this. I mean, there's other examples. I think another big one that stands out for me was, we had been talking about how the ISS, they never close any of the airlocks between the segments. And so what would happen if they sprung a leak in one of the segments? Well, then they would lose pressure in the whole ISS, and it would be a problem system-wide, right? And so at some point,
they did have a leak.
Then they had, right. But then they had, if you remember, they had that little pinprick leak on the ISS where they just sort of plugged it with their finger and some duct tape or whatever. But they do that. They really do react to the things that we talk about, especially on Globebusters. I think because so many people watch Globebusters. But it's funny because they did get rid of that AE projection on the null school, and they still never brought it back. I hadn't even thought about that in a couple of years, but they never did bring it back. That's crazy.
It was like the exactly what you're saying with the 24-hour Antarctic sun. There was literally millions of examples of it in the northern hemisphere, and one example in the southern, and then the station they had down there said, no, here's your 24-hour sun. And Jeran quite rightly pointed out that 8 hours of it a day were missing. They do keep trying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And failing.
Yeah, for sure. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Amos and Tim Coates for the tips on Rockfin. Much appreciated, guys. We definitely do appreciate those. And excellent. So let's go ahead and get back to this. So anyway, like I said, that to me is a huge one, right? The magnetic fields, the ocean fields, the air fields, the perfect symmetry and uniformity. And the fact that the pilots know and use these fields at different elevations, right? To get to their destinations faster. There's been several articles written about it. Even Wolfie 6020, believe it or not, he knows about them as well. Of course, he's never going to admit that they would ever help you get from one place on the flat earth to the other. But whatever. Doesn't really matter what he says because we know what he's about. So yeah, it's just crazy. There's so many proofs. So let's get to some more. Let's look at all the experiments that have been done with lasers, the recent FE core experiment, showing 25 to 30 miles over lakes with lasers, high precision aiming equipment. And we're seeing light that should be, again, anywhere from 800 to 2,500 feet below the horizon level, right? This is impossible. And in addition to that, guys, with FE core and actually a lot of taboo conspiracies, laser tests, not only can you see the source of the light, but you can see the reflection of the light on the lake, which tells you right there that it is not refracting. Okay. You cannot have a light coming from the source and then reflecting off of a perfectly flat surface, refracting, to cause that effect for both of them. That's simply impossible. All right.
Well, that brings about even more simple and natural proof that you're on a flat plane, of that when you're standing at the beach and the sun is up and you see the reflection all the way to your feet.
Yes.
It took me quite a while to get my head around that one, but you try that on a curved surface, you're never going to see that one line coming towards you.
No, not at all. Or if you are by a lake in a full moon, you can see the reflection of everything in the sky, with perfect stillness and, with perfect symmetry, and that cannot happen on a curved surface mirror. It just can't. So again,
that was the biggest one for me when I actually went out to Lake Michigan and looked with my own eyes and saw Chicago easily. I mean, I even have a picture. It's 38.8 miles from the lighthouse in Michigan City, Indiana, to the Willis Tower, or the Sears Tower, as everybody knows it. And from a little bit past that lighthouse, about 10 feet up off the water, I got pictures of the lights along Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. And the lights are only about 75 feet above the water.
Yeah.
From 10 feet above the water at that distance, there should have been 815 feet of curvature.
There's nothing like doing it for yourself. And this is hashtag test it to the extreme. You've got to go and see this stuff for yourself, test it for yourself, because once you see it, you then know. You're not believing, you're not having any faith or trust in anyone else. You know now what you've seen, and you can do the maths and work out that there's absolutely no way you should have been able to see it. And then you've got people like Dr. John D that have shown that they claim that whatever you're looking at is being loomed up or risen up, but he showed conclusively that in reality it should act the other way. The light should be refracting upwards rather than downwards. To see round a ball, it should be zooming off into space. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then there's this guy, Grotto 1, right? So we have this where he basically is going along and he's placing these lights at different increments along this frozen lake, right? And ironically, just like you would expect, as it goes out here to the red light, which is like the furthest one out, you've got the yellow, the red, then a blue one here, then red going on out here. It almost appears like the red one has raised slightly above the horizon, but I don't know. Maybe that's just the way I'm looking at it. But the point here is, guys, is that every one of these lights should be below the horizon. And none of them are, and they are all essentially right on the horizon line, right? Which tells you, it tells you two things. First of all, that refraction is not at play here, because there's no way that refraction could possibly bring all these lights perfectly into alignment across the horizon. And beyond that,
what they all differently because they're different wavelengths.
no, that's just the optical. That wouldn't really have any difference in this experiment. They're different wavelengths, but that wavelength is only as far as the way we see them in their color. But as far as the way that it propagates to the camera, it wouldn't make any difference.
But also, this is over a frozen lake, remember? So
precisely,
refraction works in humidity and different humidity levels. So the fact that, yeah.
There is no refraction here. None. It's frozen above it. It's frozen below it. And you have to have a density altitude change or a density and air change in order for something to refract. Well, when you're shooting over a frozen lake, the humidity essentially is non-existent. And so I would say, I don't remember, but I think he checked the temperature and the temperature was identical at both sides of the lake, which means that there's not going to be any density altitude change. So there are no conditions that are ripe for any type of reaction, let alone a refraction that would perfectly bring all of these lights back up onto the horizon and place them so beautifully in our sight.
Yeah, sweet.
I mean, this is absolutely a ball killer.
Among the
I think others. Multiple videos out there, I believe. He's really taken, I believe he did it multiple winters, didn't he?
Yes, he's done it more than once. And the other thing he did on his first one was he rode across on his snowmobile across the frozen lake, and it was hitting his snowmobile all the way across. The laser was hitting the snowmobile. And ultimately, what was he, 8 miles across the lake, and he was able to have the guy on the one side of the lake just tap down a little bit, and it brought the laser all the way down and hit right on the ground next to him. Again, absolutely impossible. It should have been 80 feet above his head, and yet he was able to put it right at his feet, that laser.
Slam dunk.
Slam dunk. Say goodnight. It's over. You know, but now, according to the ballers, that's all they have. It's refraction or refraction. And the only thing it can ever be is curvature, right? Because they cannot afford to have any other reason, right to the point where they have now gotten to the point where they're denying their own geometric horizon, right? Something that's
hilarious.
That is such a laugh. It's so comical, man. You know, you can't tell me that you can't see a geometric horizon, you know, where the land is hitting the horizon 3 miles away, because you can see that if it was actually happening, but it's not. And so they say, well, it's normal that you don't see that. It's like, no, yeah, you're right. It's normal because there is no geometric horizon, you know, mathematically, because all horizons are apparent. All right.
Well, a lot of them started questioning the size of the ball at that point. They still believed they were on a ball, but that was such a knock in the head for them that they had to then sort of rationalize it by saying, well, you know, maybe they've got the size of the ball wrong. Maybe the ball's a lot bigger and there's hidden land and all this sort of stuff. They were more than happy to entertain that scenario rather than actually finally admit that no, it's not a bloody ball.
Exactly. But yeah, that is the level of desperation. And who came up? And, you know, I have to wonder who's the guy in the background calling the shots. You know, okay, I can just see him at their Globe Troll meeting. Okay, guys, so what we're going to say today then is we'll just deny that you've ever been able to see a geometric horizon, even though we've been fighting for it the last 4 years. Well, today we're going to say, no, we never said that. We never said that. And it's like, yeah, okay, there's only, 1,000 hours at least of you being recorded saying that with everything.
And they'll make out that they knew that all along. And this is the whole, you know, first they mock you, then they attack you, and then they knew it all along.
Yeah. That tells you, to me, that tells me the difference between somebody that's honestly investigating it and somebody that is hired to try and debunk it or derail it. And, I'll let you guys make your own mind up on that. But if you want to see where all those guys are, look at the debate channels. They're crawling in there like a seething bunch of demons. Seriously, it's unbelievable how bad these places are and how bad they are. So crazy stuff. All right, so
Yeah, I just well because I don't know. I couldn't do that. I just couldn't. Because these people, they know it, and they're obviously not being genuine. So to go out there and lie, it's just I don't know like that. I couldn't do that. I hope they're getting paid well.
I would have thought it was a rarity 2 years ago. I would have thought that they were either cognitively dissonant or just retarded. But seeing so many people over the last 2 years lie to themselves and ignore what's right in front of them with this whole C word thing, then nothing surprises me anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. I mean, either the cog dis is so unbelievably bad, and granted, I will grant that there's a lot of people with that. I mean, like you said, with the C word, it's unbelievable that these people are buying this, but, like I said, the full-time debunkers, your Soundly, your Fight the Flat Earth, your Red's Rhetorics, those guys are absolutely, that's not cog dis with them. This is what they're being paid to do.
They're on the payroll.
Wolfie is being paid to do, absolutely. And anybody that thinks that this secret is not, I mean, it simply is the biggest secret the government has, period. And to think that they would not hire an army of, what do they call them? Social media influencers is what the actual correct term is called.
Well, in the UK, you've got Brigade 77, which at the last count was 33,000, get that, 33,000 military personnel whose full-time job was to sit on Facebook, Twitter, and all these other social media platforms and spew crap out like, what about ships going over the horizons? And, that is their job, and it's admitted. And the JTRIG stuff that you pulled up, John, it's not even a secret.
Yeah, they admit to it. They really do. And there's a lot of people out there that say, "Oh, you're just butthurt," and so you're saying that there's trolls and agents out there. But the fact of the matter is that the government admits to it. They don't deny it. And if you're in a discussion with a normal person, or you could say debate, whatever. I don't like to use that term because there really is no debate. But if you make a valid point to somebody, a normal person is going to concede, okay, well, that's a valid point, and then move on from there. But what the trolls do and what the paid agents do is they completely just ignore the valid point, and then they'll start arguing semantics within the way that you presented or the way that you discussed that point. Right. So instead of admitting or agreeing to something that's valid, they'll say, oh, well, I don't know, I can't think of an example, but they'll argue semantics instead. And that's just a telltale sign. And when they start doing that kind of stuff, man, I try to gracefully bow out, because you're never going to get anywhere with those people. Never.
Yeah. And if you say anything wrong at all in your argument, they will pick that apart. Just like I've misspoken. Everybody misspeaks, right? So I've said something and I've misspoken. And I think for example, one of the things when I was talking about constant speed propellers in airplanes, right? And props. And I was talking about them and kind of mixing it with helicopters. And so I don't remember exactly what it was that I said, but the ballers all came down on me like I was some sort of utter retard, that didn't understand that, that constant speed props, like helicopter blades, change in pitch, right? When that was the very thing I was arguing. But because I misspoke, and like I said, I don't remember exactly what I said, and they were right, but I did misspeak, and man, they came down on me, and that was the whole thing. Oh, this guy's a complete moron. You're going to listen to anything he says?
Like common knowledge. Yeah, like everybody knows that. It's just common knowledge about. I don't even know what you said.
Yeah.
Propeller, pitch and blah blah blah. Yeah, come on.
Another good example I had was, you'd show someone ships going over the horizons or whatever, and you'd show them the eyesight view, and then you'd show them the binocular view, then you'd show them the zoomed in P900 view. And although you're showing them on a P900 view a ship that's like 15 miles away that should have disappeared an hour ago, they will come back and say, yeah, but look, it's disappearing from the hull up. You see? So it's obviously a ball. And that's the semantic sort of crap that they'll come out with. They'll disregard the fact that, it's 15 miles away. It's 12 miles past its visible viewpoint, but no, look, it's disappearing from the hull up. So Aristophanes was right, or some crap.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So okay, what else? Good grief. There's so many. I mean, I think of them all the time. Obviously we listen to them. It's just amazing. And yet I have yet to see even one proof. Oh, okay. Another one that they try and get us on, right, is the EQ mount telescope, right? And I mean, this is ridiculous because they try and tell us that the only way that an EQ telescope can work is on a ball Earth. Well, in fact, that's not true at all. What they have done is they have cleverly, they're still calibrating. You still calibrate on either the North Pole Star, which would be Polaris, or the South so-called pole stars, which would be
Octantis.
Sigma Octantis. Yes, thanks for that. I had a brain cramp. One way or the other. But then what they never take into consideration, they never do this, is that first person perspective. Your dome of vision, if you will, right? The fact that you only see so much, so far before your angular resolution drops to 0. And if you scan the sky, essentially that angular resolution, if you were to plot it where it hit that 0 line, would form a dome over the top of you, right? So that is exactly how any piece of optics works as well, the telescope. So what they do is they substitute the alleged curvature of the Earth, and they say it's the curvature of the Earth that this is compensating for, instead of your dome of perspective, which is really what is happening. That's what you're seeing, is you're seeing this perspective difference versus they want you to believe that what it's compensating for is in fact the curvature of the Earth. Now, I suppose either way it could probably be true, but when you think of the fact that even if we were on a ball, you would still have that cone, that dome of vision. Therefore, you would have like 2 domes, then all of a sudden it wouldn't work anymore. So it is from that. And if you think about it, you can easily then make the statement and the assertion that an AE telescope would never work on a ball Earth. It couldn't, because again, they're taking out the first person view and the perspective view that you have, which is a dome of vision. And it's very, very simple.
Well, this is a great tactic of theirs, and I've seen it numerous times, that you'll show them something that can only work on a flat Earth, and they will literally come back, with a video saying this, like the EQ mount can only work on a flat Earth, like gyroscopes can only work on a flat Earth, like GPS can only work on a flat Earth. It's, classic.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
it really is. And, and as much as I hate it, we also have some flat earthers who are guilty of stuff like that as well. You guys, I don't know if you saw it.
I know what you mean.
There's a guy that put out a video the other day, and I just cringed when I saw it. But he came out with a video. It was a challenge to Wolfie 6020, right? And I'm not going to say who it was, because if you know, you know. I mean, I'm not going to, but so he's challenging Wolfie 6020, and this guy knows zip about aeronautical physics, right? He doesn't know anything about it. He's not a pilot. He has no clue what he's saying. He gets these quotes from NASA and says, well, you got your lift and you got your drag and you got your gravity and you got your acceleration and yada, yada, yada. And he then comes to this conclusion that flight over a ball would be impossible. And it's like, oh my God, you can only imagine the ballers are laughing their butt off on that one. Because look, even if we were on a ball, because of the size of it, yeah, there would be different flight dynamics. There's no doubt about it. Like you would have to compensate and push down constantly for that change in elevation, right? As you go around the curvature, you would have to do stuff like that. But to say that the flight physics would be impossible on a ball is utterly retarded. Now, as far as takeoff and landing on a ball, that of course would be impossible. But the flight physics itself, absolutely not. You can fly around in a big circle and pretend there's a ball out there, and you can fly anyway and all over it, upside down. It doesn't matter, So, like I said, the flat earthers do that too. And when I saw that, I actually sent him a message and I said, dude, take your video down. Wolfie is going to have you for lunch on this. And as far as I've seen, Wolfie has not responded. But I mean, my God, the arrogance that this guy thinks that he's got Wolfie on this flight physics thing, which is, borders on retardation, just makes me cringe, honestly.
It really goes to show you that there are going to be part of this J-trig stuff that they admit is they're going to play both sides of the fence on the argument, right? So they're going to have agents inserted in the pro-globe side of the debate, as well as on the pro-flat earth side of the debate. And their tactics are going to be, opposite. But so we sort of have to expect people that are going to misrepresent flat earth arguments and just come out and make arguments that are just completely irrelevant to the thing and intended to make us look stupid. Right?
Absolutely. Like the Flat Earth Society.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't believe that guy is an agent, but wow.
I'm not saying that he was, but
that level of stupidity was just cringeworthy. Oh my God. It was bad. So hopefully he'll take it down before Wolfie sees it. I mean, the ballers have already had a field day with it, but I mean, to make such unbelievably arrogant statements like that, it does, it makes us all look really, really bad. Everybody makes mistakes, but when you go off and you think that you know better, than somebody who is an ATP rated flight engineer, and you've never sat in the cockpit a day in your life, and you watched a couple of NASA videos, and you know what? The ballers are going to come back and say, oh, that's what all you flat earthers do. It's like, no, it isn't.
Yeah.
And we can demonstrably prove that, but.
Well, it's designed to make us look stupid. And I mean, if we here decided to have a trolling exercise and pretend to be ball earthers trolling a flat earth program, then we could come up with the same amount of idiotic nonsense, like why do ships go over the horizon, and
I've got even better ones.
Daytime.
I won't even say them. Yeah, I won't even
all
say them
over the world. But you see how easy it is, don't you? You see how easy it is to manipulate people. Sorry, Zach. Tell us.
Yeah, I was just saying. I've got a few that if I was a troll, a ball troll, man, they would be hard to refute. They would be, but I've never even said them aloud. I won't. Nope.
Go on. We need a challenge.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Don't get trolled. We don't get trolled by anything decent anymore.
No, there's certain things I just don't. There's certain things that maybe out in the middle of the woods somewhere with no electronics around anywhere. Then I'd tell you. But other than that, nope.
All right. Okay. Well, if that was the case, then you'd know my identity as well. So
there you go.
We'll do that.
That's hilarious. All right. So anyway, okay. So what else? You guys have any more good ones that you can think of?
Well,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, we
Rob-
haven't touched on the the vacuum and the pressurized system. I think for
Oh,
me
yeah.
that's one of the best because it also shows like a closed system. So I really enjoy that, especially when I'm talking to new people or things like that. You do the water level and see too far and planes landing on a spinning object, that sort of thing. But but the vacuum and the pressurized system, that really sort of just takes this idea of space right out of the equation. So
Basic
that's
fluid
usually
dynamics, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lucas. That's obviously a very valid argument. Of course, the ballers retort to that gravity. Well, it's gravity that's doing that. It's gravity that's giving us the emulation of the closed system. And they don't. Again, when we're talking about vacuum levels, right? Well, first of all, they want to say that. All right, they want to say that the vacuum differential is not powerful enough to make any difference, right? To be able to do anything like that. And they cite as evidence for that people like Wolfie 6020's dumbass filling his tire with double the pressure, right? And they will try and make you believe that going from 60 pounds in a tire to 30 pounds in the tire is the same as going from 30 pounds to zero. The difference is if you went from 30 pounds to zero, you'd have to have 10-foot thick steel and concrete sidewalls to be able to stop the outside, air from breaking into that vacuum, right? So that's one of the biggest issues right there. They completely misrepresent the power of the vacuum, and they've done it very cleverly too, because it's really easy to assume that, well, what's the difference? If I go from 14 psi to 0 or 14 to 28, it's exactly the same. No, it isn't. And, the only thing I can point to prove that is, NASA themselves, who, has the Sandusky, Ohio vacuum facility, right? That has the 8-foot thick concrete and steel walls. And that is only to accommodate a 10 to the negative 6 torr vacuum, right? 10 to the negative 15th is infinitely more powerful than that, right? So anyway, John.
And then when you contrast that with the lunar lander and its tin foil, I mean,
oh God,
it's just nutty. Yeah,
it's beyond belief. Yeah, the lunar lander. There's no way. There's just no way. I mean, it's laughable to even think that. But anyway, go ahead, John. I know you were going to say something.
Oh, well, it's just one of those immutable laws of physics. We're dealing with basic fluid dynamics. You cannot have a vacuum environment adjacent to a pressurized system without some solid structure separating the two areas. And so what do we have with the ball Earth? Well, we've got the Kármán line, basically, where at some point you go from this pressurized system, which, so it is a gradient up to that point. But you go from a pressurized system to the vacuum of space. It's a relatively short transition from the pressurized system to the vacuum. And yet they don't claim that there's any sort of a solid structure. There's no barrier separating the two. And so it really does, it hurts the globe Earth. I mean, it's just one more thing that you can add to this pile of evidence that really does point to the globe Earth being a lie.
But we've also, John, shown that there would be a gradient in pressure in a sealed container. Zach, you did that, didn't you, with the gas bottle, with the pressure gauge on the bottom and the top, and
just a 10-gallon tank.
Yeah,
we welded another spout so we could put another gauge on the bottom, and all I did was I cooled one end and heated the other end. And there was a very noticeable pressure difference. I think it got up to 3 pounds.
Yeah, quite considerable. So showing that just because we can show and they can prove and we can prove that there is a gradient between the surface and going up does not mean that, we're living on a ball.
Right. Well, and they'll try to say that it proves gravity too. I mean, it's like it's never-ending circular arguments with them, because it's like I said, yeah.
Now, John, I would not disagree with that, even though I disagree with what they're saying gravity is. There is no doubt in my mind there is a downward acceleration.
Right.
But and that's something that's a really tough subject to discuss with a lot of flat earthers, because they seem to be convinced that relative density disequilibrium explains it all, and it does not. It just doesn't.
I agree that it doesn't. And well, and of course we can debate all day long what exactly is this thing that is called gravity, right? But yeah, so that my point was, though, when you say, oh, well, there's a gradient, therefore gravity is true. Well, now you've opened up this whole other can of worms with gravity, which, of course, that's another discussion altogether. But sort of changing gears a little bit. Earlier, you had mentioned Polaris, which my whole life as a globe earther, because believe it or not, man, I believe that the Earth was a spinning ball in outer space for the vast majority of my life. I'm about 40 now, and for 35 years, I believed what everyone else believed, right? But so even as a globe earther, there was a lot of problems with astronomy, with space, that I never really could come to terms with. And it just made me wonder, and that's about it. But so, Polaris has been central to all of the other stars in the north for all of history. So for as far as we can tell, for as long as people have been documenting things and writing it down. And the fact of the matter is that really disagrees with the ball Earth model, because they claim that while the Earth rotates on its axis, the axis is sort of wobbling or precessing like a top that's losing momentum. And what we should see is let me back up. So for one precession cycle of this wobble, I think it's about 26,000 years, and that's observable by, the precession of the equinoxes is one symptom of this. But
okay. Hey, John. John,
Uh-huh.
1 second. Can you keep it rolling just for 2 minutes? I got to run to the facilities really quick. I'll be back.
Sure.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
sir.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so Polaris, is in alignment with our North Polar axis. And what we should expect to see, especially over a couple thousand years, we should expect to see Polaris's centrality to the other northern stars fall out of whack. And instead, what we actually do see is we see that Polaris has remained central to all the other stars for all this time. And so the problem is, especially when you start looking into things like the precession cycle, which they claim is a physical wobbling of this axis, it is disproven by the fact that Polaris remains central to the other stars. We should not have, according to the ball Earth theory, we should not have a permanent central star in the north. And as a matter of fact, we do with Polaris. And so that's a big, big problem with the standard model. And again, this was something that I realized was a problem even as a ball Earth believer. For the majority of my life, I realized that this was sort of a head scratcher. And when you mention this kind of a problem to a normal person, right, they should at least admit and concede that that is a valid problem that deserves more investigation. And when instead, if a person just sort of, starts arguing some way that you presented this to them, then that is a good indicator that you're not dealing with a normal, regular person, but instead you're dealing with potentially a troll.
A troll, yeah. John,
yeah.
do you know if do you know how long ago precession of the equinox was, or anyone? Do you know how long it was proposed?
Yeah, that was Hipparchus. That was back in like 300 BC, around the same time as we're talking ancient Greeks here.
Okay.
It was Hipparchus, and then his predecessor, or maybe his protege, won. But they had picked up on it. I think it was 300 BC. So yeah, We're talking 2,300 years. And what they were documenting was they were documenting precession of the equinoxes, which is basically during the vernal equinox, you've got the sun rising in a slightly different position in the heavens over the years. And what it is, it's 1 degree and change over 72 years. So it took these guys literally like their entire lifetime and then the lifetime of their student to document 1 single degree in this precession cycle. And in fact, over time, we have confirmed that this does appear to be a valid thing. But again, they're dealing with the equatorial stars on the vernal equinox. What we're talking about is, okay, so if you've got that precession of the equatorial stars, then what about the North Pole star? Because the North Pole star should, in fact, be way more obvious. It should be, because you have that centrality. You have the fact that it doesn't move relative to the other stars over the axis, and the fact that this very obvious star Polaris doesn't have any change. That's a big problem, man. But yeah, the 2,300 years. Yeah.
What I
since
wonder.
it was named, since Polaris was named, it should have moved over 27 degrees.
Right.
Along
Yeah,
its
right.
precessional path by now.
What I wonder if what this is all about, again, being back engineering, if anyone's done a long exposure of the pole star, then they'll realize that Polaris is not actually in the center. It does actually circulate around a black center, a center that isn't the star. So I wonder if they noticed that and then reverse engineered this whole precession of the equinox, 72 years, 1 degree, etc., rather than just admitting that Polaris isn't the topmost center. It's slightly off.
Well, and I guess
I seem to be of the opinion that precession of the equinox isn't even valid as well. So sort of yet to be proven in a sense, but it seems to be part and parcel of that, Polaris moving. So they seem to be,
that's
joined
what I mean.
at the hip in a sense.
That's what I mean. It's like a Band-Aid that they've said for ages that it is the center of the sky and it doesn't move. And then over time with technology, we've realized that it's not actually the center. It does slightly rotate. That they've then had to back engineer all this precession of the equinox, because I never knew anything about this until I started looking into it. And that was, I don't know, about 20 years ago, I started hearing the precession of the equinox. I was just wondering how far back this has been documented.
Well, especially when you start looking into the zodiac type of stuff, you actually see sort of discrepancies of where the signs are and how that's sort of laid out. And it's not to discount that there aren't sort of cyclic occurrences that do happen, but whether it's the story that they've told us of how it actually happens is sort of my dispute with it.
Right.
Yeah,
And
James, sorry, John. I think it was 1820s, 1830 maybe, early 1830. James Bradley, he was the astronomer royal at the time, and he figured out that the stars do this thing that he named stellar aberration, where they tend to precess a little bit, like arc seconds, 0.02 arc seconds, tiny little movements. And they do this every year for about 4 years, but then all of a sudden they jump backwards, like
That's
6 to 8.
Just
arc
bizarre to me.
Yeah. And they reset where they normally were. And it's not like all the stars do this. He said groups of stars, like local groups of stars, would all precess a little bit and then shift back. And they didn't all do it at the same time. Like different stars were doing the shift back in different years. And NASA to this day still measures this. And in the side note, if it's a negative, they'll mark it in the side bracket, but in the actual data collected, they just put it as a 0, no precession for that year, even though it was negative 3 or 4 times what it normally is forward.
Now, do we have evidence that this is that we can see with our, these days?
No, these are very tiny movements. But NASA even admitted to doing this. Jeran did a video on it. I actually went to NASA's website, looked at the page, read the exact same thing he read, went back 6 months later to show somebody. Try to find something on James Bradley at NASA's website now. Good luck.
Well, it did it on Stellarium. I remember Jeran doing it and winding it back 2,500 years or whatever, and showing it resetting all
Yes.
the way. And I'm just watching it thinking, yeah,
Yes, it did it on Stellarium, and it also did it on the software that I was using as well, that I got with my Meade telescope.
Changed it. Then they changed it, didn't they?
Yep, they certainly did. They put something in where it would only go back maybe a couple hundred years or something like that. So yeah, they do listen. They absolutely do listen to us because, you know, they think, oh crap, we got to get that out of there because we're going to be proving ourselves wrong. And yeah,
you know, and one of the things that I've theorized, and obviously I can't prove this, is that, you know, the stars and their movement are actually tied to the sun's movement, and seems to change between, you know, its movement between Cancer and Capricorn. So those tropics there, but you know, that's just one theory I've sort of been working on, and you know, so see if anything comes of it.
What they say is now they say, well, in about 4,000 years, we're going to have a new North Star, right? They'll say it'll be processed over to where Polaris is no longer the North Star, and we'll have some other, I forget which one they say it's going to be, but it's going to be some other star that's going to be central. And the thing is there's no evidence to suggest that's ever going to happen.
Is it Vega, or was that the last one?
I think it might be, maybe it's Vega. I think Vega's in there, either the previous one or the supposed next one.
Yeah.
But the thing is we should see a constant sort of phasing away from Polaris's central location, or practically central location.
And
over
it doesn't
time.
happen.
It doesn't happen. I mean, just because it's 1 degree over 72 years, you know, that breaks down to a half a degree over 36 years and a quarter a degree over 18 years. And, you know, that's actually, that should be noticeable in a person's lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, over the last 18 years, now we're not talking about degrees in space. We're talking about degrees in terms of this precession of the Earth's alleged axis. But what we have actually seen is 0.0 degrees over, well, apparently over 2,000 years since they started looking at this stuff. And that's pretty damning against the globe. It really is pretty damning.
And I think Vega was the last North Star, and the new one, I can't remember what it was called either, but I know there was a ding-dong between Jeran and Orphan Red about this. So, about which was going to be the next North Star, which presumably would adopt. Yeah, you remember? Presumably the next North Star will adopt the name Polaris as well. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't believe that's somebody else that whatever.
Sparkle sound.
Yeah. Ding ding ding. Absolutely insane. So all right. So
Thuban. There we go.
Yeah, Thuban, that's it. Yeah.
That's it.
That's pretty crazy. So anyway, you know, obviously we could go on forever and ever and ever over this, and it's ridiculous. I mean, Ball Earth, Globe Earth has got absolutely nothing, and all of their arguments are easily debunked. And you know, their style of debating and style of arguing is unbelievable. You know, to the point where they even contradict themselves, you know, 30 seconds later, just so that they can disagree with whoever they're debating with. I mean, I sometimes wonder if these guys that go on like Flat Earth Debates or go on 24/7 Discord server, you know, and I listen to those guys, the ballers that go on there, I wonder if they listen to themselves sometimes, because it's laughable. It's so crazy. It's like, how can you not hear what you're saying? Wow.
Right. Well, and it really does. I mean, it
paid. I think that's.
Go ahead.
Oops.
I was just going to say, if they're getting paid, it's probably in their manual not to go back and listen to how stupid they sound, because that's just that's got to tear you up inside.
That's
right.
true.
Well,
go ahead, John.
It leads me to believe that they are being disingenuous, because anybody who's being honest with themselves isn't going to play those sorts of games. I mean, let's be real with it. If you're being honest with yourself, you're not going to say one thing 1 minute and then 5 minutes later completely contradict that in order to save face in the current phase of the argument, right? And so anybody that's doing that consistently, you just have to go ahead and assume that they're being disingenuous, and for a good reason. I mean, again, this goes back to the whole sort of J-Trig Project Mockingbird stuff, where it's admitted, it's on record that the governments of the world, and not just the United States government, but other sort of large governments, they do have agents in place that are specifically to preserve the status quo. They want to prevent people from waking up. They want to prevent people from thinking for themselves. They want people dumbed down. They want people brainwashed and indoctrinated into this system where essentially we are slaves, and we are slaves for a currency that is fiat and worthless. We're slaves for a government that is simply there to mind control us into subservience to a system that ultimately imprisons us, imprisons our minds on a hypothetical ball. It prevents us from realizing the truth, which is the world is potentially unlimited, and that we are far more powerful and spiritual beings than anybody would have ever thought. So that's what they do.
They're following a script. And if you followed them long enough, you could probably see them getting to the bottom of the script and going back to the top of the script, because that's pretty much all they've got.
The non-player characters, right? NPCs.
Yeah. You know what cracks me up, guys? I don't know if you've seen them do this, but I've seen them screw up several times. They obviously have a manual, an e-manual, right? That is full of little quotes that they can put in your chat, like, well, what about this or such and such and such, right? And some of them will screw up and leave the number next to it, right? They'll copy and paste the number in.
Yeah. Oh, I've noticed that a few times, man. And honestly, I used to really very diligently go through comments and respond to them. Then I've honestly stopped doing that. I do read through comments and I'll respond to them to a degree. But it's got to the point to where, yeah, I mean, you have to wade through just the muck of just hundreds of people that are just there for vitriol and just there for argument. But yeah, they do. It's like they're running the same script. They have a manual or like talking points that they just cut and paste from. And yeah, it's funny because you'll see completely different users on completely different years with the exact same verbiage. It's like, wow, that is pretty uncanny. Like, how did these guys, what do they plan this out? But no, I do think that's what they're doing.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's insane. But yeah, I love it when they accidentally leave the number in there. So anyway. All right, guys. Well, we could literally do this forever, but I think we're going to wrap it up. And, hopefully if you are on the fence, you're getting an idea of this. And when I say we could go on for days and days and days, showing you flat earth proofs and ball earth debunks, it's so easy. I mean, it's not even a challenge anymore. It's just, it's crazy. All we're up against now is just the vitriolic, because now pretty much all of my comments that I get, are just, well, you guys are stupid. And, most of these people are from gamer channels. I don't know why, but they seem to recruit gamers to do this. And I don't know exactly what the mentality is there, but obviously people that are heavy duty gamers seem to be susceptible to be able to do stuff like that. So, and if you're a gamer and you're awake, I apologize for saying that, but I'm just saying what I have observed, because it really does. You say X and X gaming channel, and they'll come with these utterly retarded, completely wrong arguments and stuff. So
whilst they run around in their games on their stationary flat earths. Yeah.
Yeah.
Show me a game that is built on I used to play flight sims and things like that, and
yeah,
they're all built.
Here's a good question in the chat. So Alt-Shift-K says, moreover, if those forces are really so powerful, why are people like Bob, Mark Sargent, DITRH, and even you and I allowed to continue discussing it? Why risk it? Well, the answer to that Alt-Shift-K is because, there comes a point on the censorship that if they are so blatantly overt about it, then you're going to, start triggering off people that have already said this. Wow, when I saw how much you guys were being censored, it convinced me right away. Right. So,
Well, how much are we allowed to talk at the moment? You know, you're being chased off off YouTube. Everyone's going to Rockfin and Odyssey.
That's right.
No, I've literally had people that I consider to be friends try to discredit me because I have not been censored and not been banned from YouTube. Yeah. It's like, I mean, part of me wishes I was, and maybe you'd give me some credibility then, right?
Well, again, that's got to fall into some, big brain and J-Trig or Brigade 77, is that you deliberately leave some of the prominent ones uncensored, so that causes the turbulence of
a couple of eyebrows to be raised, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they say, well, you must be a shill because you're still on Globebusters or on YouTube or whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just child's play, isn't it? Every part of this, and the reason why I stopped watching the debates and stuff is because it gave me flashbacks to primary school playground. Where people were capable of completely contradicting themselves from 1 minute to the next. You listen to a child arguing or whatever, and it's just hilarious. And that's the whole point of it. They can play us like fiddles, and generally, even if we don't fall for it, 90% of other people are going to fall for it.
Yep,
it's too easy. It's too easy.
Yeah, absolutely true. FB special. Okay, I'm beginning to think Alt-Shift-K is an operative, honestly. You're really asking some stupid questions, dude. That first one was decent, but now it looks like you're just copying and pasting text. So you're going to.
Does anybody know what does that keyboard shortcut do by any chance? I've never heard that one before. Alt-Shift-K. Like what I know, like Control-V's, paste, and what is Alt-Shift-K?
I don't know. No idea. But
I'll go ask Jeran.
Yeah, go ask Jeran. He'll know. Anyway, yeah, it's
got to be something on gaming.
He's claiming that we're immune, and all these other people are subject to these censorship laws, and FE is immune, which is telling us exactly what we're talking about today. It's like, look, we're not immune. That's why we're going to Rockfin. That's why Mark Sargent just got hit with, what did he say last night? Something like 8 community guideline strikes at once.
Yeah, it was 8. Yep.
It's like, oh my God, and this guy's how's he getting away with it?
How many alien channels are being censored as hard as Flat Earth? How many other if Flat Earth was so inane and nonsense, then you wouldn't need to censor any of them, because you'd be able to trust anyone who's watching them to be able to use their own discernment to see that, it's complete nonsense, clearly, but obviously it's not. And relatively intelligent people like ourselves are showing this.
Okay. Alt-Shift-K is used by 15 programs in our database. Darken blending mode, preview a mail merge, move window down, darken display list of sheets, preview split pencil line. Ute posted a thing that showed Alt-Shift-K, so I don't know.
Oh, nice. Well, thanks, YouTube.
Ute's awesome. But yeah, here's this guy. We're sitting here talking about, and he's saying, well, how come you aren't being censored? It's like, have you been listening? Are you kidding me? That's why we're moving away to these other patterns. And you're saying, oh, well, you're immune to it. It's like, oh my God. Now this is exactly the type of technique that they use. We're sitting here talking about it, and he comes in and asks why we are immune to it. It's like, we're not immune to it, you moron. That's the whole problem here. Oh my God.
Look at the bottom of this video on YouTube and see if there isn't a Wikipedia entry for what Flat Earth actually is, according to the controllers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, crazy. So
it's an archaic model of the universe that has been debunked, right? They just have to put that under every video. Like, they put that under some of my videos that don't even have anything to do really with Flat Earth. It'd be some other off-topic stuff, and they put it there anyway.
Yep, exactly. So anyway, you guys that were watching Mr. Alt-Shift-K operate in the First of all, his messages were coming in very long, very complicated, very, very long, very often. And like he was copying and pasting all of this stuff. And, you know, I mean, it's so obvious when you deal with one of these people, right? And then he argues against the very thing that you're talking about and acting as like it's not even happening. You know, it's just incredible. So I hope you guys saw that. I really do. I got rid of them because, you know, people like that are not welcome.
I wish I hadn't seen what's just on the screen again.
Oh God.
Yeah, and if you had me trying to, you know, type out a long message real fast, you'd barely be able to read it, I'd say.
Yeah, no doubt.
Especially on a phone, you know.
No, a lot of it is just cut and paste off of a already pre-done script, and that's just the way it goes.
Exactly.
And they know you're going to try and read it too. They know you're going to try and read it, and therefore derail the show by being distracted by them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I should write a book about this because, yeah,
it's
everything
crazy.
they do. I could think of everything they do.
Absolutely.
And less.
Yeah, and when you've been in this for 6 years, I mean, it becomes blatantly obvious. And, you know, there's a lot of new people in the community, and a lot of people have been here in Flat Earth as longer than me. And it's like when you have a troll in your chat, or somebody, I should say a social media influencer, it is so freaking obvious. I mean, it's like the stench kind of comes before their comment, you know? It's just unbelievable.
I'm not paid, but anyone who's new to Flat Earth should sign up for I don't even know what it's called, the Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app.
Mm-hmm.
And only watch the videos on there, because you won't find them anywhere else. If you search Flat Earth, is the Earth flat, anything along those lines, you're just going to get absolute mainstream nonsense and paid J-Trig Brigade 77 or whatever they're called.
Well, there
trolls, basically.
There is one other place where you will find good quality videos like that.
Rockfin?
Guess where? Well, yeah,
Stop,
absolutely.
look, listen. Stop,
at Rockfin. But also this channel right here, the Globebusters 2 24/7 Flat Earth channel, which is up and running. And, you know, I've got thousands of videos that are on a rotation on it, constantly playing. And right now there's only 19 people watching it, but sometimes there's a couple hundred people watching it. So it kind of goes up and down. A lot of people tell me that they put it on and fall asleep to it at night, and they're just, you know, it's kind of crazy.
I did actually need it. I needed that last Saturday night. I went out for the first time in 2 years, I think, and I usually put on Globebusters 24/7 for the dog to drown out. Yeah. I can't leave the dog without him barking his arse.
My dog's a flat earther too, so I know what you mean, bro.
So I leave that on, but it wasn't available. It had gone offline, so I had to put the E-War 6-hour video on, and I must admit he didn't bark once while we were out, so that worked pretty well.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I really like the EWAR work. It's, you know, it's really good, and we're going to cover more of his stuff, but there's just so much in there that he went through. I got to say, the one part of it I didn't like was on the first series before, I guess the second series, well, that was the one we caught first, and then the first series, the part where he was going through the like the Hampstead kids and all that business, that just made me sick. Honestly, I did not like to listen to it. It just made me sick, even hearing that. And
was that prior to the 1 to 7 or whatever that we were looking at last week? Or I haven't seen the Hampstead kids stuff covered by him. I'm
yeah, that's, I'll drop the link to you. Kids, so. It's actually right here. Let me see.
Please do, because I was looking for that channel and I was having trouble finding it, which happens all the time for me. So yeah, if you have a link, that would be awesome.
I do. I'm going to put it right now. This is the one showing, and I will put it in our chat, or actually just grab it out of the YouTube chat if you want.
I mean, anything covering the Hampstead kids case is harrowing to the core. Is that what you mean, or did he cover it in a different way that made it unpalatable? Or
he showed. I mean, it showed the kids talking very graphically about what happened, and it just made me sick, to be honest with you.
The whole hamster kids thing is hideous to start. I mean, this
and the whole,
where it goes very deep.
And the whole Hollywood, pedophilia stuff that they talk about, and the pizza and all that. It's like, oh my God. And they were talking about all the emails that were brought out and what it meant. And they had some people talking, they were like doing semi-comedy routines at like Comet Pizza. And it was sickening, disgusting, sickening. So I didn't care much for that. But other than that, I mean, the work is really good, and it's all in this space of water.
Jeran covered that, the hamster kid stuff.
He did. And
I can't handle any of that sort of stuff.
Oh, God, it's awful.
Stay clear of. I can't handle it. Yeah.
It's very close to the bone, but it's not something we can ignore, unfortunately.
No, not at all. So anyway, it's in the, did you guys get the link, the Space is Water link there?
Yeah, got that.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, really good stuff. That's the only thing I didn't care for. And it's not that it was bad. I mean, it's probably something that most people really need to hear. But especially being familiar with it already, it turns my stomach every time I see it. And it just, ugh.
Well, yeah, it's like talking about the missing people that go missing every year.
Yeah.
People just don't want to hear it. It's terrifying.
Sadly, it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of, you think we're censored. That this sort of stuff is horrendously censored.
Yeah, we don't,
to where people get executed, I'm sure, all the time. And some of those missing people were people trying to talk about that.
I mean, no one will find it anymore, but if you ever do search for it, look for Starbuck and New Forest and children sacrifice. It's just, it's a slap in the face, but it is not something that we can just dismiss because it's uncomfortable. This stuff, everything will be revealed. This is the apocalypse, and this stuff is going to come out. So sadly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but so there that is. And of course you'll find all of this stuff on the Glowbusters 24/7 channel. And I add to that constantly. I'm always adding to it. So there you have it. All right, guys. So, geez, it's been almost 3 hours. So let's go ahead and close this down. And John Savage, I will let you lead off with anything you have coming up or any final words.
As usual, Bob, I've got absolutely nothing coming up if I can help it.
Okay.
Other than to just try and rise above the cesspit that we live in and look forward to better stuff coming.
Yep, absolutely.
Cheers for the invite, and hopefully I'll see you next week.
You're very welcome. No problem. All right. Cool. All right. Lucas, any final comments, sir?
No, I'll just be on Ironworks as usual, so people can come and hang out with us there. So, yep, thanks for having me on.
Okay, you're very, very welcome. And Zach, any final words from you, sir?
No, that was a lot of fun. I love going over this stuff. There's new people coming into it every day. So really, these every once in a while I think is a great idea. Just kind of go through, our favorites and just have a discussion about them.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. A top 10 type of stuff. And there's lots of, there's a lot of them we didn't even cover. Like the Black Swan, which, but I think everybody's pretty familiar with that. If not, where have you been, under a rock? But I'll probably have to bring that out and cover that now that I've mentioned it, because, some people I may actually say, what's the Black Swan? So, but that's a discovery that Bo BM LSB 69 made several years ago, shooting the oil rig platforms off the coast of California. And what it yielded was absolutely irrefutable flat earth proof, to the point where it actually made the globe earthers give up on their geometric horizon and say that you can't see it. That's how powerful that was. So you can only imagine. It's some big time proof. Pretty awesome. All right. And John, last but not least is you, sir. What do you got coming up?
Yeah, I just got the final section of King's Dethroned audiobook up on the Morgile channel, so that's up. I've got the Gravity video I'm still working on, getting that to be completed and rendered and uploaded within the next week, hopefully. So new content coming, and yeah, all that's going on the Morgile channel for now, and still considering maybe doing some stuff on Rockfin in the future. So all that to come.
All right.
Great show though, guys. Had a lot of fun, and sorry I was a little bit late. I had to pick up my friend from the ER earlier, so that's why I was late. So forgive me, please.
Okay. Well, we'll let you slide this time. All right, guys.
All right.
So yeah, we'll call that a show. Thanks for joining us again. If you can possibly join the Rockfin stream, that would be great. If not, that's okay too. That's why we do this Wednesday show. Which are a lot of fun also. But, like I said, if I would have been able to, talk more about things, if this wasn't YouTube, it is being broadcast on Rockfin right now, but I would have probably elaborated a little bit more, but, not so much, because honestly, it makes me ill talking about that stuff. But, just not my favorite thing to carry on about. But this Sunday, we will be discussing something that I think is very important, in current affairs, that will definitely not be able to be discussed on YouTube. So that will be definitely in the Rockfin portion of the show. You may want to tune in for that, because, the world is getting crazier and crazier every day, guys. And I'm sure you don't have to come here to listen to me to know that. Just look around. It's insane. So anyway, okay, guys, well, we're out of here. We'll see you on Sunday. And until then, be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind, because there's truth inside. Peace out, everybody.